Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios today. Ian is here. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So Duquesne just survived against BYU for the umpteenth year in a row. An 11 seed has beaten a 6. So apparently that's kind of a trendy thing here or there. The first team out of the tournament is an SEC team. That does not bode well for the Southeastern Conference. Mississippi State, who took the bone out of the tush of the Volunteers on Friday, they are donezo by Izzo. They are out. And we'll be keeping you updated and just kind of keeping an eye right now on all the games and everything that's going down. Wagner and North Carolina are tied at 13. Not sure that there's going to be much of an issue there. Though the Long Beach State Arizona games at halftime, I got to tell you, if there was any game that I cared about, it would be the Long Beach State Arizona game. Only because Long Beach State's a 15. They're down by 6 at the break, 41-35, and their coach has already been fired. So before the start of the conference tournament, they announced the coach was not coming back. And then they won the conference tournament. The coach got up there yesterday, and he was making, all kinds of jokes about how, hey, I've already been fired. And so now they're playing Arizona. Ian, did you see what the athletic director at Long Beach State said?
No. Did he have a response?
Apparently, this is the guy that fired the coach that won the conference tournament that's right now in a dogfight with Arizona. He said, quote, "My belief and a hope is that by doing what I did and the timing of it, that they would play inspired, and that's what they did," Bobby Smitherin told the Associated Press. "I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it worked." I mean, what a
Trying to take credit, huh?
What a weasel. What a freaking weasel. All right, I want to start with this. We got a huge day today. We got all kinds of Titans news to get into. TD will join us at 3 o'clock for the Power Hour there. And there's one Titans rumor that won't go away we'll get into this hour. We got a big hockey game tonight, as it's a real measuring stick for the Predators going up against the Panthers. But I want to start on this. Rick Barnes was on Vol Calls, the Tennessee volunteer coaches call-in show. The one that's always fun to listen to when Tennessee football's not very good and the fans get to dial up the phone number and yell at the coach. And Rick Barnes made a comment on Vol Call saying, quote, "The one thing I've always said about the NCAA tournament is I wish our teams would have done better. It bothers me to no end." So if there's any question as Tennessee gets ready to take on 15-seeded St. Peter's tonight, it is, yes, Rick Barnes knows that Rick Barnes never wins in the month of March. Just like I know, just like you know, and it took Robbie and Joe forever to admit it, the biggest Vol fans I know. It took Robbie and Joe forever to admit that Rick Barnes is allergic to the NCAA tournament. I don't understand. I don't know why. Don't know how. And today, as I was kind of mapping out my day and thinking about, okay, the Preds game comes on at 6:30, and then the UK game comes on around then, and then the Tennessee game comes on right after that. I'm like, it reminded me of a couple years ago when the Stillman and Company program almost bet $1,000 on Tennessee to lose to Oregon State on the money line. And I didn't do it, and it kills me because Tennessee did lose to Oregon State on the money line, especially after that morning. I said that Wayne Tinkle at Oregon State was a better coach than Rick Barnes, and Robbie and Joe, ha, 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 ha. And then I got the last laugh there. So, that being said, with the well-established past of one Richard Barnes, the head coach at Tennessee, and as somebody who begs everybody not to tell other people about your bracket. You know what? Hey, I had Mississippi State going to the Elite Eight, and they lost in the – nobody cares. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm picking Tennessee to go to the national title game. I sat down today, and I filled out a bracket. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you the fact that there's been 2 games that have played and I got them both wrong. I'm not going to sit here and tell you when a game's on, I'm really rooting for this team because I have them in my bracket. I'm not going to do that. I can't stand that stuff. But as I sat down and filled it out, and I did this, again, to the best of my ability as somebody who barely watches college basketball, I have Tennessee going to the national championship game. I think Tennessee's going to beat St. Peter's. St. Peter's would have a better shot at knocking off Tennessee if St. Peter's hadn't gone to the Elite Eight 2 years ago. But they did. And so after their rear-end spanking that they got with Mississippi State on Friday, coupled with what we all know St. Peter's is capable of, even though they have a different coach, Tennessee is not going to overlook St. Peter's. They will win tonight. Then, after they win tonight, and they're going to beat Texas in the first round because as much as I thought Rodney Terry, the head coach at Texas, a former Rick Barnes assistant, by the way, as much as I believe Rodney Terry deserved the head job, I'm not a huge Rodney Terry guy. They almost lost to Louisville, and we were pathetic. So Colorado State will beat Texas. Tennessee will beat Colorado State. Then I figured if Tennessee ends up in the Sweet 16, it'll probably be against Creighton, but who knows because they're in a dogfight right now with Akron. Tennessee will probably win that game. Then there's Purdue. And Purdue at the top of the bracket, one thing people haven't talked about. Matt Painter at Purdue is as much of a pants pooper, if not more, than Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes, and I know it was 21 years ago, Rick Barnes' Final Four appearance can have a drink, but Rick Barnes actually been to the Final Four. Matt Painter, all those years at Purdue, all those good teams, and they haven't been to the Final Four. So I think Tennessee's going to get to the Final Four. I have Wisconsin in there. I think Tennessee's going to beat Wisconsin. I think they're going to get to the national championship game. And I know there are a bunch of you out there. If you're a Vols fan, you hate hearing me say Tennessee to the national championship because I think there's something about me antagonizing Tennessee fans that Tennessee fans have come to love. But this is the case with everything, whether it's the Predators or Rand Carthon or the University of Tennessee. If I think it, I'm going to say it. And I think they're going to go to the national title game. Now, if you're somebody who hates the Vols, and I think the love the Vols, hate the Vols split in Nashville is very similar to the love the Dallas Cowboys, hate the Dallas Cowboys split across America. I actually think more people in America hate the Dallas Cowboys than love them, and I think more people in Nashville hate the Vols and how just ridiculous their fans can be at times than love them. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, God, Jared. Well, I mean, you're the one who's always on Rick Barnes' tush, and now you're going to say national championship game. How can you live with yourself? You're the guy who every year tells Tennessee fans when they're talking about the Joe Lunardi doesn't respect us, you're the guy who goes, who cares? It doesn't matter because come March you'll lose anyways. And now you're saying national championship game? I am. I think Illinois is going to win the tournament, and I think they're going to beat Tennessee in the national title game. And I really believe in this Tennessee basketball team. And I am not Chad Withrow, and you know it. This is not a homer pick of, oh, I hope this happens. I really don't care. I'm just telling you, everything I know about basketball, everything I know about this Tennessee team, this is the year that it finally comes together. And I think the most important thing when it comes to Rick Barnes and his just history of pants crap after pants crap in the NCAA tournament is he knows it. The players know it. The opponents know it. The media knows it. We know it. The fans. I remember a couple of years ago, and I think this was Joe, I remember just the staunch defense of there's nothing wrong with Rick Barnes. He's not a bad tournament coach. He's not. And then they lost to Michigan in the second round of the tournament when they clearly should have. And they had a bad shooting night. And then they lost to FAU last year in the Sweet 16. Now nobody questions it anymore. And I just think, again, in order for teams to have the kind of success that it is required to get to the top, to win a championship or to play for a championship or to get to the Final Four, there are so many things that have to go right. And it's funny talking to people that are in it, whether they're coaches or athletic directors or team presidents or general managers. It's like, think about all the little things that have to go right in order to win a title. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl because Malcolm Butler decided, and he's looking over here a lot, I think I'm going to jump this pass. Tom Brady was able to win another Super Bowl because of a rule in the rule book that even though he was putting the football away because his arm was going forward, it wasn't a fumble. And Tom Brady won another Super Bowl after throwing an AFC Championship game losing interception that had Dee Ford lined up offsides. Every little detail matters. And when it comes to this Tennessee team, I see it. I see, and I said before, when they beat South Carolina to clinch the SEC regular season title, I said this team needs a loss. This team needs a reset. This team needs to be brought back down to earth. And they got it. Last Friday at Bridgestone Arena by a Mississippi State team that wasn't even much in the ball game with Michigan State today. This tournament has a funny way of dragging you down, and it's also got a way of lifting you up. And I am a process guy. If your process is correct 100% of the time, I believe you'll get the results you want 75% of the time. And Rick Barnes has not gotten the results, and this year is the year that it's different. Gentry wrote a column in the Tennessean, and the headline was, if not now, when? This is it. This is the year I'm getting on the bandwagon. Tennessee to the national championship game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on that at 615-737-1025. We will be giving away a pair of Preds tickets for Tuesday night's game against Vegas, so get excited about that. And I will come up with a keyword here at some point this hour to give you away, and then we'll give them away later today in the program as they got a big one tonight against Florida. I want to take a second here, and I just want to send my condolences and my thoughts to the family and friends of Earl Woolsey, who is best known in town as being the guy that brought George Strait to Nashville. As George Strait's manager for years, he's a music legend, but he's really a Nashville legend. And I found out about Irv's passing yesterday. I knew Irv pretty well. A lot of people around town probably think they knew Irv pretty well because that's the kind of guy he was. And it hit me real hard yesterday hearing about Irv's passing and seeing not only the music community react to it, but the Nashville community react to it. Irv loved talking ball. He loved talking about his horses. He was a horse racing guy. And, I mean, he loved telling me about, oh, yeah, we got this coming up. We're going to go out to Saratoga this day. He was a big sports guy, but he was a big Nashville guy, too. And he owned a lot of businesses around town and was obviously huge in the record business and everything else. And I never really knew Irv as, like, Irv, this big guy in music, because I just knew Irv the guy. And he was truly wonderful. And the one story I'll share about him is he told me how he and George Strait operated for all those years. He said, 45 years, I'd never had a contract. He and George Strait, and this is the way things should be, honestly. He said he and George Strait never had a contract. They shook on it one time, and that was their relationship for 40, 50, however many years. And so Irv was a good man. If you knew him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking about his family, and I'm absolutely thinking about his many, many, many friends because he will be missed. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
When you look at the teams that are here, they've earned it. And I don't care if you're playing in this tournament. I have a great deal of respect for the basketball committee. And I learned it a long time ago from Dave Gavitt. And obviously Danny was on my staff. And I know how hard that committee's working to try to be fair, to get everybody in. And all they do, I don't know how it all comes about, other than the fact I know how hard they work at trying to get it right. And so if you're in it, you've earned it. And if you're in it, you've got to believe that you've got a chance to advance and move on.
How can you not root for that old pawpaw Rick Barnes after everything that he has been through over the years? And again, I'm not rooting. I'm not one of these people, again, that fills out the bracket and then says, oh my God, I really want Creighton to beat Akron because I got Creighton going to the Sweet 16 in my bracket. I hate those people. Don't be that person. But it's hard not to root for Rick Barnes. And you're talking to somebody who for years has taken joy out of the pain of Tennessee fans getting their hopes up every year only to have them shattered by Tennessee losing to Scarbini State in the first or second round of the NCAA tournament. This year, I think it's the year. I think this is the year you're going to the national championship game. Now, because I was thinking about this as well as tonight's Preds game, which, by the way, Ian, I have an issue with tonight's Preds game and the ESPN Plus thing and everything else, which we'll get to in a second. But Predators fans are excited about how the team's playing right now. They're loving every game. It's fun with how much they win. And yet yesterday I said, I think this team's a cup contender. And it was like, oh, no, Jared, don't say it. Don't say we're a cup contender. And I kind of feel the same way about Vol fans when it comes to the NCAA tournament and the Final Four. It's almost like I'm jinxing it. It's like it's a perfect game or a no-hitter. And it's like, don't talk about the no-hitter. You're going to ruin it. Don't talk about the Stanley Cup. What are we talking about here? And here's what I realized. I realized that in both cases, Tennessee basketball fans and Predators fans, and there's a lot of overlapping between the two, most notably Joe. But what I've noticed with this is I think the recent heartbreak is so strong that these fans are afraid to fully embrace the situations with which their teams are living in right now out of fear of having that heart broken again. Vols fans are guarded. Preds fans are guarded. I see it. I mean, I was talking to Emily Proud, used to be on Channel 2. Now she's with CBS, and she's a huge Vols fan. And I was talking to Emily Proud maybe a couple weeks ago. And I told her, I said, look, this team is good enough to win the national championship. And she said, I hear you, but I mean, there's just been so many times I'm like, it's okay to get your hopes up. Preds fans, it's okay to get your hopes up. And this is coming from a man whose first true heartbreak in life was watching Ray Lewis run the ball into the end zone in a year in which, at 10 years, 11 years old, I didn't think the Titans could lose. Like, the Titans won the Super Bowl by a yard. Everything about the next year was getting back to the Super Bowl and making up for the fact that they lost it by a yard. And then when I watched Ray Lewis run into the end zone with that football, I turned to my dad and I said, and I don't want Joe to get mad about this, I was 11 years old at the time. I said, are we going to lose? And my dad was like, yeah. I was like, we don't lose. And the heartbreak that ensued after that, I understand. But what I think it also does by being afraid to accept the fact that the Vols are a legitimate contender here, and they should. This is an easy draw, right? Like, the only possible slip up along the way is Creighton, and then you get an Elite Eight matchup with Purdue, who lost to a 16 seed last year, and their coach is as much of a choke artist as your coach. But they're afraid. And I understand. Like, if the Predators win tonight, let's say the Predators go to Florida tonight and do what they did to Winnipeg last week, I'm going to tell you right now, I will be talking about this team being a Stanley Cup contender. Like, that this is a measuring stick game for a potential cup. And people aren't going to like it. Because, well, Jared, I hope you're right, but I don't feel. I'm just telling you. That's how it is. Don't be afraid to have that heart broken. We've all had our hearts broken at one point or another. And we all know how hard it is to get back out there after that heart's been broken. Well, I'm here to tell you right now. Sometimes some of the greatest joys are experienced when you are willing to let that heart be broken. Vols fans, Preds fans, let that heart be broken, because if it's not, and Tennessee gets to a Final Four, and the Predators get back to the Cup final, the joy will be unparalleled to anything you've ever experienced. The bone I have to pick, Ian, with the ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this. I think UK comes on tonight around, 6:10? I think is when the UK game comes on.
I haven't seen that officially, but.
And all the basketball Benjamins out there are telling me that UK might lose to Oakland tonight, which I don't think is going to happen, but whatever.
Yeah, 6:10 CBS.
Okay. I can't flip. I want to sit there. I want to flip. I want to flip between the UK game.
It's an exit app, go into the new app kind of thing.
God, talk about a stick.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Hey, if we could all just have cable again.
It just, I want to watch a hockey game. And then the hockey game will go to commercial. And then when the hockey game goes to commercial, I want to flip to the basketball game. And if the basketball game is a 16-point game, then I'll flip back to hockey. And God forbid there's another game on at that time that gets close. I want to be able to flip to that. And instead, I'll have to
have
exit
the computer,
the
or have
app.
your computer out.
No, I don't want to do that. I want to watch the games on TV. I don't want to exit app, log in, download, sign up. I don't want to do any of that.
We used to have it good.
I just want to click. That's all I want to do. Why is it so difficult for me to be able to click?
Does YouTube TV have a remote control like that?
Well, if your TV has a remote control and your TV's smart enough to be able, or you have a Roku or a
you can use
Fire
it like
Stick.
That.
Right. I've got, I got the games on right here. I got Fire Stick right here.
Okay.
So I got the Fire Stick remote and I've got the 4 games up at one time. That's fine. You can click. In fact, YouTube TV has now come up with a way for you to be able to press the last button and go back to the channel you were watching before without having to go back to the menu. And that's great. But because it's on ESPN Plus, I'm screwed. I hate it.
Yeah, it is a predicament there.
So if the Predators get up big and UK is close, I'm going to have to turn on to the UK game. If the UK Oakland game is a blowout, then I'll watch hockey. But this, I'm not logging in and logging out, and
That's interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do tonight either. Something on the TV and something on the phone. I'll have to figure out what.
Oh, no. We're not doing phones.
I'll probably have to put basketball on the phone for a little bit. Switch around.
Joel says on our text line, this is why Hulu Live is better than YouTube TV. It doesn't give a rat's ass. Does Hulu have ESPN Plus built into it? If so, that's the 3 times a year that this will be a thing that I'll need. What I want one that has all the channels all at one place, just like we used to have it for forever. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I see a bunch of phones. We'll get to them. Stillman and Company, 1025-106 to the Game Plus. Coming up next, I got shouted down today for what I think should be the truth. The truth. We'll get to that coming up next. Plus, by the way, our code word for these Preds Golden Knights tickets, when I tell you later in the show to call in and tell Ian not now, is going to be cable. Because I miss it. The real cable. The cable that I was paying 200 and something bucks for like a sucker every month. That's going to be the code word. So be listening for that. 615-737-1025. And our coverage of the NCAA tournament is brought to you by Toyota. Ready, set, go get your Toyota today at Toyota.com.
I'm loving coaching this team. I mean, it's practice today, and all I'm telling them is, you make sure I'm having as much fun as you. So we'll see. And there's no guarantee in this tournament. And let me say to everybody, forget about seed and all that stuff. If you win on a half-court bank shot by one, you celebrate because you're surviving and marching on. That's what this tournament is. You don't let everybody come at you. You got to do this. You have to do this. If they don't do it this way, go ahead. Have your fun. This is about survive and advance. And we're playing a good team now in Oakland. They're good. What they do defensively, what they can do offensively with two kids taking 23s every game and having the freedom. Greg is a great coach, not a good coach, a great coach. And then they play funky defense. They play a defense is not normal. And I'll tell Greg, we're not changing much. So when you watch what we do against zone, that's what we do. I'm not trying to be tricky. Here's how we play. I don't want them thinking too much. I want them playing. Let's just be who we are, and let's see if that's good enough.
There you have Calipari today. They play Oakland tonight. And again, the basketball bennies think there's a chance that Oakland might beat Kentucky. I don't think they're going to. But I do think UK will lose in the second round just because I watched them at Bridgestone Arena on Friday. They don't play any defense. And so this morning I was doing my local weekly hit on ESPN 680 in Louisville where I used to work. And as I've said here, said on Sirius, said everywhere, that if Kentucky loses in the first weekend and does not get to the Sweet 16, it will mean that no second weekend for Kentucky basketball since 2019. That is unacceptable. It would have been unacceptable for Tubby Smith, and that's why he got fired. It would have been unacceptable for Billy Gillespie. It would have been unacceptable for Joe B. Hall. It would have been unacceptable for anybody. But because Kentucky gave Cal a ridiculous contract, everybody just seems to think that, well, Kentucky basketball, even though they're supposed to be the biggest, baddest boys on the block, they can't afford to pay the buyout. So they're handcuffed like they're Alabama A&M, and they've got a certain budget. This was me this morning on ESPN 680 in Louisville.
I think this year is kind of the rubber meets the road year. They have the easiest draw. They should easily get to the Sweet 16. This is not a high bar to ask. But if he can't do it, you're talking about going half a decade without making it to the second weekend. If you're Kentucky basketball, you got to fire the coach.
You're not firing a coach. I mean, that economically doesn't add up. You can work out
it.
I love it.
Basketball anymore. I thought the SEC had all this money, and all these SEC schools could do whatever they wanted, and they could fire any coach they ever wanted to. And I guess if you can't afford to fire your coach, then you're not as great of a program as you think you are.
All right. It's easy to spend everybody else's money. I mean, I will say that. I mean, you have to have. To me. Is there no number then? What if it was $1 billion?
Well, we're talking $30 million. So I know exactly how much it is, and $30 million you can afford.
You don't have any idea about their finances. I know
exactly what the SEC cuts checks for. I know exactly what SEC football programs fire their coaches for. And basketball is a football program at Kentucky, or at least that's the way everybody at Kentucky makes it sound like. And the only reason they're not going to do it, Drew, is because Mitch Barnhart would have to be the one that would have to figure out a way to explain the $30 million. And the only reason that Cal has that contract is because they were stupid enough to give him that contract in the first place.
Yeah. Well, firing, I do wonder, though, if they don't get out of this weekend, how bad it is. Is it to the point where fans actually do demand something? God forbid they get beat tonight by Oakland.
I'll tell you right now. He should be fired. And that's fine. If my guys in Louisville that follow it way closer than I do, if they don't think Kentucky can afford to fire John Calipari, then that's fine. But then don't start acting like you're the biggest, baddest boys on the block. Because I know Auburn football would fire the coach if they had done nothing to Auburn's standard in 5 years. I know Georgia football fired Mark Richt because they were tired of winning 9 and 10 games. They could afford it. And if Kentucky's supposed to be a basketball school, and it's supposed to be the best basketball school in the world, then you got to fire Cal if you lose. You got to fire him. That's just me. Adam in Portland's up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's up, Adam?
Yeah, what's interesting, though, man, and I don't know why everybody's just kind of ignoring what Tennessee – number one, I don't put stock into the SEC tournament. I don't really care about it. I don't know why people do unless it's, a team that's going to go on a run that wasn't going to get in. But Tennessee is clearly getting in. So I try to at least weigh that. But Tennessee shot so poorly in that game. I don't trust them. I think they're going to win this week, I think they're going to win tonight and probably win this weekend. But if you're going to turn the page, because I remember you that Oregon State year where you're like, I'm going to bet $1,000. Like, I'll never forget that. I thought it was sorry as hell. But at the same time, you're consistent with it. But if you're going to be like that, why pick this year when they had like one shooter or two shooters you could trust? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Jared.
Why this year? Because Tennessee has a deep team and they can they can play every kind of game. They're going to have the best player on every court that they play, correct?
But let me ask you this, Jared. Yeah, I think you're right. But at the same time, you saw how cold they went against Mississippi State. So if Dalton Connect's not on and Adu is not on, who's going to make shots? You trust Muscovy?
That's the whole nature of the tournament, right? Like Kentucky had a team in 2015 that had like 19, Adam, thank you for your call, that had, I want to say like 11 pros on it. I mean, it was something ridiculous, and, they didn't make shots that game. I mean, that's going to happen to anybody. The reality is, can you win a game where you don't have your best offensive luck? And I think with Adu in the post on defense and with Meshack as an on-ball defender, I think Tennessee can gut out that kind of game. Now, if they don't make a basket, they're going to lose. But I just think, to me, this is the most complete Tennessee team, right? Ziegler, Vescovi, Jordan James, like all role players, all know their roles, all know exactly, hey, we need you to make that shot, Santiago Vescovi. Like, we know that. And so that's why I picked this team. This team is battle-tested, and they got refocused by what happened last Friday. That's why I'm picking this team. One texter says the Kentucky football program quadruples what Kentucky basketball makes annually. You don't know. First of all, there is no breakdown of, okay, here's where all the money that the SEC gives us comes from football, and here's where all the money the SEC gives us comes from basketball. That's not how this works. The SEC cuts one check, and of course, a majority of the money comes from football. But you and I both know Kentucky is not paying their program in football. They're not doing what Alabama's doing in football, or Georgia, or Auburn, or everybody else. And when it comes to the booster money and the donor money, the Kentucky money comes in on basketball. Why? Because it is a basketball school. Like that's, in Kentucky, Cal came out a couple of years ago and said it was a basketball school. Well, if it's a basketball school, you got to go. If you can't win in basketball, and then if you're going to tell me, they don't have the money in order to pay Calipari, that's fine. Then you're a broke school that has to suck it up like the rest of us. But you say you're better than that. Just like they said they were better than that when they hired Billy Gillispie over Cal the first time, because they were like, Cal's a cheater at Memphis. We're better than that. And then the second time they're like, we're not better than that. Let's go ahead and hire Calipari. Well, are you better than it on this? Mike says Kentucky didn't have a problem pushing Tubby Smith out years ago, and he won a national championship while he was there. So is Cal. You got to be fair. Cal's won a national title there. The problem with Cal winning his national title was it was over 10 years ago. And at some point, all the great things you did are great, but what have you done for me lately? Right? Like Tom Landry at the end of his run with the Cowboys was a disaster. And don't even get me started on Bill Belichick and what's happened there in New England. There's no reason to keep Bill Belichick. And then it's like, but Bill Belichick's won all those Super Bowls. Yeah. Years ago. Boy, a lot of people are all worked up about the cable thing. About the fact that, again, the hockey game tonight, it's like I got to exit the app to get it just drives me crazy. I can't read through all your texts on it, but apparently you guys are all as worked up as I am. Wes in Clarksville says, do you have to have Bally to watch the president? No, it's ESPN Plus, Wes. That's why. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. TD will be here at 3 o'clock on the Titans. There's one Titans rumor that won't die, and I'm starting to think that there's some legs to it. Like, I'm starting to think that this is real. Just because the pattern I've seen with the Titans in the Rand Carthon era, we'll get to that coming up next. First, I want to tell you about Window Nation. That's right. It is March, and that is a critical time to check your home's windows. So call the pros at Window Nation right now, because for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. That phone number is 866-90-NATION. Again, if your windows won't close or if your windows won't open and they're creaky and they're, letting cold drafts in, all kinds of stuff. If that's an issue, call Window Nation. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Stillman and Company, I do have a Titans take to get to here in just a second, but I have to address one texter who says, I said tonight's Preds game is on ESPN Plus. And Wayne in Hoptown says, wrong, Jared. You have to have Bally Sports or it will be blacked out on ESPN Plus. Wrong, Wayne. The game tonight is on ESPN Plus. You have to have ESPN Plus to watch the Predators tonight. And I forget what happened yesterday, but we were talking about something along the same lines, Ian. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something. And somebody texted into the text line and was like, "You're wrong about that." I'm like, "No, I'm not wrong about that. This is my job. Knowing where the game is my job." Now, don't call up and ask what channels the game's on, because you can Google that. But as far as how all these TV channels and that is what I do for a living. The game is on ESPN Plus tonight. It will have ESPN announcers, which, I don't love. It'll have ESPN announcers and so on and so forth. So with that, make of it what you will. I do want to get to this L'Jarius Sneed. These rumors between the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed, they won't die. And this was Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated, who was on the drive with Carrington Harrison in Kansas City. And I believe this was Monday. And here's what he said about the latest on L'Jarius Sneed.
I was told the two teams most involved, the Colts and the Titans. I know Adam Schefter of ESPN went on another radio show this morning and said the Colts are out. My understanding is, as of this morning, the Colts are not interested. That being said, the Colts have been speaking to L'Jarius Sneed or his representation. The Titans remain involved, to my knowledge. The Lions and the Falcons were very, very interested at the outset of free agency, even right before free agency, but has since cooled. Of course, Carlton Davis now traded to the Lions, so that kind of closes that door. If Sneed's asking price doesn't change, I think it becomes very, very likely that he's back in Kansas City on the tag.
Okay, so I don't know anything other than that right there. Now, TD has said that the Titans were in on Sneed at the beginning, but then they got scared away. And, I think PK said that he doesn't think the Titans are in on Sneed. Here's the thing I guess I think I'm starting to realize when it comes to Ran Carthon. If he decides he's going to do something, he's going to find a way to do it. And that may be good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It has nothing to do with my opinion on whether it's a good move or a bad move. It's the move itself that I'm talking about here. And we saw it with Kevin Byard. This time last year, he was trying to get Byard to take a pay cut, and ultimately he did get Byard to take a pay cut, and ultimately he moved Kevin Byard. And when it came to the trade deadline, the reports were, hey, they're probably going to, maybe move on from Derrick Henry. And then all of a sudden it was said that they weren't. And then as soon as free agency came, the Titans moved on just as fast as Derrick moved on. If Ran Carthon gets an idea in his head that, hey, this is what we're going to do, he's going to find a way to get it done. And so when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed, the one team that I have constantly heard as in the mix is the Titans. And it kind of reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins, which is, hey, we're going to find a way to get this done, but we're not going to jump out today. And I'll give Rand credit for this, because it's like he's not saying, hey, I will absolutely right now do it. Whatever it takes, do it. It's just once he decides that he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And I think that probably Calvin Ridley is a part of this too. He decided, hey, I'm going to spend the money on a wide receiver. And so who's the best wide receiver? I'm going to pay him. And he did. And that's where, again, I think the reason the Titans name keeps getting floated out there is because the Titans, I think, are keeping their eyes on L'Jarius Sneed. And this is why I think as we wait for some of these holes to be filled, the Titans aren't necessarily just jumping out and adding guys to add them, which gives me a lot of anxiety. But they're not doing it because they know, hey, if we end up trading for L'Jarius Sneed, there's going to be a $22 million commitment that comes with that. And so that's how I feel about the Sneed thing is when I keep hearing Titans, it makes me think the Titans are keeping their eye on it, and that, as we've learned with Rand, if he decides he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And I think that, again, I think he's decided he's going to do L'Jarius Sneed, but on his terms. And so the more I keep hearing Titans, the more I think this is going to happen. Let's go to Kenny the Mailman, who's up next in the basketball tournament. Kenny, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Sure, good to talk to you. Had a couple of numbers for you. If you look at Calipari just on the surface, what a great record he has. He's done this and that. But you look a little deeper, and I think the count is up to now where he's had 33 first-round draft choices while he was at Kentucky and another 10 or 12 second-rounders. And you add all the other schools in the SEC together, and I don't think they even have that together, and yet he's just won the league about a third of the time. It's like having a souped-up race car and people in Corollas passing you.
So,
when you look closer, it's like, how can you have so much talent and do so little with it? You'll have a great day.
You know, Kenny, good call. I remember years ago when I was on the radio in Louisville, and I was very young in my career. And so doing a solo show on the radio, I was just trying to get to the end. And I can hear people doing a solo show when they don't have a ton of experience doing it. And I can literally hear that person almost imagine somebody like in a kayak or a raft just trying to, swim to the shore. Like that's what so I was very young and I was trying to swim to the shore. And I had been on the air, for 3 hours in the morning, and now it was like 3 hours in the midday, and it was hour 6, and I was like, oh my God, this is just. And Steve Spurrier had come out and said, well, with Nick Saban's recruiting classes, Nick Saban should win more. And I said on the air in Louisville at the time, I go, well, can't the same be said for John Calipari? And as soon as I said that, all the phones lit up. And the first call I took, was, well, if my coaches were Bobby Petrino and Rick Pitino, then I'm like, okay, I hit a nerve. There is no doubt John Calipari has underachieved at Kentucky with the talent he's had. There's no doubt. And some people will chalk it up to how competitive this tournament is, but Roy won multiple titles at North Carolina. Kay won multiple titles. Like, if you're a great coach and you have the great talent, there are going to be years where you get upset with a great player. But with Cal, it's almost every year, except for the 1 year that it wasn't. And so I don't disagree with all of the draft picks and, the money and the contract and everything else. Cal is so insulated at Kentucky. If you asked him where any building on campus was, except for probably the football stadium and anything that has to do with basketball, he probably didn't even know where it is. And it's like, that's great, but if we're going to pay you $10 million a year or whatever it is they're paying him, you have to win. And every coach knows that. And it doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, baseball. And when you're at one of the best jobs in the country and you can't win, there has to be an explanation for it. And let's not forget, too, we're talking about Kentucky and all the winning that he hasn't done there with all the high draft picks. That Memphis team in 2008 was an incredible team that had the championship in their hands and lost it. TD is with us next on the TD Power Hour. His thoughts on the Titans roster as is right now and where it goes from here. Where are they going with the holes on the roster? What are draft fills? What are roster fills? What are external fills? We'll do that with TD, and, of course, we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. It is the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD is with us. TD, how are you?
Hey, what's going on?
So I want to get right to this. I've actually been looking forward to this the entire week, and that is kind of this state of the Titans roster where we sit right now, because we're kind of in this lull period where we're still kind of in free agency, but not the initial wave anymore. But we're still not into April yet, where it's 100% draft. So where we sit by my count, TD, the Titans have holes at left tackle, maybe right guard, right tackle, defensive end, inside linebacker, corner, and safety. What do we think kind of the state of the Titans roster and where they sit in free agency and where they're looking draft-wise?
Well, it's a good thing I stay on top of things, whereas I stay ready so I don't have to get ready, because I didn't know this what we were talking about until 2 minutes ago. But nevertheless, here we are. The inside linebacker position, I think that's one that we're going to have to address by way of we're going to have to see them address it by way of free agency. You could also, I think it's going to rely more upon the draft. And I think, when you look at some of the guys, Peyton Wilson, you look at Jeremiah Trotter Jr., you look at those types, I think those are the type of players that they're going to have to pick. And you look at the 4th, 5th round, I think that's where it is. As far as the right tackle position is concerned, I mean, listen, I don't know that that's a mandatory area that they have to address. It seems to me that they believe between Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Frere, working with Bill Callahan, they'll have somebody at right tackle. But I'll also say this, J.C. Latham is absolutely in the mix, and I think, it would be interesting if they draft a right tackle, that high and before Joe Alt. But I think one thing that should be noted is Notre Dame's pro day was today, and I don't believe the Titans had a presence there. Now, obviously, it doesn't take going to a pro day to know what Joe Alt brings to the table. I think he is the best left tackle in the game, and probably, outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe Malik Neighbors should be the pick at 7. However, that's where they stand. So I think left tackle is an area that they're going to address. Right tackle is one that I think is kind of a wait-and-see situation. You said that you feel that they need a guard as well?
Right guard.
Right guard. Well, I think between Daniel Brunskill and Sadiq Charles, they'll have veteran competition there. But that's another thing. You look at Christian Hayes out of UConn. That's a guy that, look, if they can manufacture a third-round pick, that's an opportunity to get a guy like that. But there's also going to be other interior offensive linemen available later. So I don't know for sure that they have to do that in free agency, and you see what these guards are getting paid. And I think it's just more evidence that the pocket being protected inside out is very important. And that position is one that is going to command, if you're a high-level player, you're going to get some money. So Peter Skoronski, he'll be getting paid at some point in the near couple of years. So you have that. What was the other position?
Well, I want to while we're on the offensive line, because there's a couple follow-ups I have. When they brought in Andrus Peat this week, and I know they didn't come to an agreement with him, but he is primarily a left side of the line player, played at left tackle last year for the Saints. Mm-hmm. I was told Pete was on a visit, as a potential swing tackle, which would make some sense. But now that you bring up J.C. Latham, I wonder in my mind, okay, is this the kind of thing where they end up maybe moving back in the first round, going with the right tackle, and then signing Pete to play left tackle? It was something that I hadn't even thought of until you brought up the fact that they're not at Alt's Pro Day and that they are, I guess, interested in Latham.
Well, I'm not saying that, Latham is the guy over Alt. I'm not saying that. I don't want to get that misconstrued. I do say this, they're very close. And I do know that there are a select number of teams in the league that have Latham rated above Alt. And I think when you have just a big mountainous guy like that, now I'm not saying drafting him and flip him to the left side, but there are other teams who have drafted a tackle early, right tackle that is. And you look at what the Eagles did with Lane Johnson. They drafted him and put him on the right side. I remember the 49ers drafted Anthony Davis out of Rutgers and flipped him to the right side. And they had Joe Staley and Anthony Davis for years. And you look at, Jason Peters and Lane Johnson. So I say all that to say this. Right tackle does have some value. I don't know about at 7. I think, depending on what's on the board, they might have to reconsider. For me, when I look at right tackles, later, Roger Rosengarten out of Washington, he's a legit right tackle, and he has shown the ability to flip to the left side too. And remember, at Washington, Michael Penix was left-handed. He's essentially the blind side protector at Washington. You know what I mean? So the key to all of this is there's an abundance of tackles available in this draft. Obviously, between Joe Alt and Fashanu, Talise Fuaga, there's a drop-off. Troy Fautanu, there's a drop-off after those guys. But, is that drop-off significant enough to bypass a Dallas Turner, to bypass a Brock Bowers, to bypass a Rome Odunze if he's there? You know what I mean? And that's, I think, the thing the Titans have to consider.
So when you brought up Radunz potentially competing for the right tackle spot, I did find it interesting that he brought up with Caroline, Brian Callahan did, that he thought that Jalen Duncan did some good things, and he said that he thinks Nicholas Petit-Frere has some talent, and he left Radunz out of it.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised by that, but I also – and I know Bill Callahan's a great line coach, and I'm not knocking that. My issue with line development is the amount of time that I just don't think coaches have anymore, and that they don't pop each other as much as they used to. When Trevor comes on and he talks about Radunz, it seems like Trevor feels like the way Radunz is built athletically, he would be better suited for guard. And I wonder if they decide, okay, we're going to battle it out for right tackle. Would that actually be doing a disservice to the right guard spot? Because Radunz did show some signs last year on the right side of the line at the end of the year that if Trevor's right and his feet are more made for a guard, I might rather have Radunz battling it out at right guard than battling it out at right tackle.
Remember Radunz battled out for the right guard spot before?
Radunz battled out for right guard before.
Radunz was getting reps at right guard after he got beaten out for right tackle.
Okay.
And it still didn't work. I think, they put him back at right tackle. He showed some, I don't want to call it promise, but some signs of life, we'll put it that way, at right tackle. Now, here's the thing. You mentioned Pete and him being comfortable on the left side. Well, guess what? Dylan Radunz, talking to Jim Nagy, Dylan Radunz was most comfortable. What he gathered, from his scouting or whatever you want to call it, his evaluations, Radunz was most comfortable on the left side. So, there's a lot that you have to consider with all that. I think, when you look at what you said as far as the opportunities to bang and things like that, that's a drawback for offensive line for sure. Now, I'll say this about Sadiq Charles and talking to people in Washington. They did not bring him back because of lack of talent. They didn't bring him back because of frustration, because it seemed like every time that he was ready to turn that corner and become a solid starter, he would get hurt. And they just got tired. Coaches get tired of that. Organizations get tired of that, so they moved on.
Well, it's like the Titans and Christian Fulton.
Yeah, essentially. You know what I mean? Who had to visit to L.A. I'm not sure, what happened there with the Chargers, but he hasn't signed. But, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And I think that's something to consider with Sadiq Charles. You look at how they doubled up their, strength and conditioning staff. I think that's something that's notable. I'm glad they kept Brian Bell. He's really good at working on those guys with getting back to – from the injuries and things like that. But I wonder how that will help a guy like Sadiq Charles, a guy who is clearly talented, a former fourth-round pick, clearly talented, and you put him next to his former teammate, Lloyd Cushenberry at LSU, and I think you might have something at the right guard position.
So you texted me last night, and you said
yeah, you never text me back either, man.
I wanted to bring it up. I don't want to waste the good stuff on the text messages and then not be as good on the air. You said to me last night, I think I found a Denico Autry replacement watching Missouri defensive lineman Darius Robinson. You said they're the same player. I saw today an NFL.com report, I think his pro day might have been today, and that he is skyrocketing up boards right now. So these kind of players, the one thing I keep in mind, because there's a lot of players I'd like to have on the Titans, is they only have 2 picks in the top 100.
Exactly.
And that makes it like there's like 19 players I'd like to have in the top 100. Do you see this as the Autry replacement something that they can find on day 3?
No. I will be shocked if Darius Robinson lasts to day 3. He's been discussed in first-round conversations. Now, here's the thing, Jared. Every year you have 50 first-round prospects, right? 50 guys, you say, hey, they're going first round. Well, he's one of those 50. So I'll say this. If he falls into the second round, 38, that's a good find there. But the fact of the matter is this guy, after watching what he did at the Senior Bowl, right, and how he elevated himself there into the Combine, he had a pretty solid showing at the Combine. 285, running 4.7, that's pretty good. You know what I mean? And then you look at the Pro Day, which evidently was another good showing. This guy, he's just continuously rising. So I don't think he's going to be there at day 3. But at 38, that's definitely one that I would think about.
TD is with us. Get your phones in for the end of the hour. We will make sure to leave a ton of time so that you can get your questions in for TD at 615-737-1025. The rumor that will not go away, L'Jarius Sneed and the Titans. TD, what do you know? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
I don't think the Snead thing's going to happen. If you got Snead would be in number one and change everything. You could be back heavy instead of front heavy, and that'd be just fine, and not something that we've seen from this team, but just fine. Taking Snead out of it, then I'd say equal parts edge and corner. That safety spot, there are multiple guys there, Simmons and May and another Snead, right? One of those three I think would be perfectly fine starting opposite Hooker. But you need a starting safety. You need a starting middle linebacker. You need a starting cornerback, and you need an edge, even if you're looking at Key as a starter. I think it would be a shared spot with Key opposite Landry. And then you're kind of penciling in Joseph Day as a nose, even though he's more of a tackle end.
That was PK talking about he doesn't think the L'Jarius Sneed thing's going to happen. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, TD, the winds of gossip seem to always include the Titans in the L'Jarius Sneed discussions. What do we know about the Titans and a potential L'Jarius Sneed trade, gossip, rumor, conjecture, whatever?
Yeah, well, I had Matt Verderame on talking with TD this week as well, and we discussed some of the things with that. I tell you what I know. Initially, there was definitely interest, and there's still interest. It's still one of the things where every once in a while you dip your toe in the water to see if it's still hot. You know what I mean? And if the temperature comes down, you get in the bath water, right? That's how it works. And I think in this case, that heat is what the Chiefs are asking for. Now, I don't know for sure that the 2025 third-round pick is the compensation that the Titans offered. I do know the asking price that the Chiefs have right now. The Chiefs, not Snead. The Chiefs. I know that price is too much for what the Titans want to do right at this point. There's definitely interest. Now, in talking to Matt Verderame, the interesting thing, and you played it coming off of the break a few segments ago, was that Snead's asking price is too high. Apparently, he wants to be paid $22 million a year. He wants to be paid, and it's interesting to me because players normally they're concerned with that guaranteed jack, right? Mm-hmm. The AAV is something that's typically an agent-driven concept, right? So the agents will want that. But what Matt told me was that AAV, the 22, was coming from Snead himself. He wants to be paid the highest average annual salary, which is, listen, the more power to him. I personally would be concerned about the money I know I'm getting. But nevertheless, sure, that's something that's on there. Now, this is the thing that Matt said that really it made me go, Apparently, to Matt's recollection, Snead didn't practice in training camp last year because he had the knee situation. Mm-hmm. And from week to week, it was one of those management types of things. Now, he's 27 years old. I don't know that I would do a big-time contract for a guy who just a year ago wasn't able to practice during training camp. Now, don't get me wrong. He's a really good player, and you look at his strengths, right? The versatility, he could come in the slot and cover those receivers. He can line up outside. So if you, and Matt made a good point, you look at the, guys that he went against, an assortment of really top-level guys. Only one of them had a 100-yard game against him. He held his own, and you have to give him props for that. But I just don't know that I would spend that money. But I tell you what's really interesting, Jared. If you look at that draft, now you mentioned Fulton earlier, right? Snead was picked 138 in that draft. You look at the guys in the first round, right? Jeff Okudah, number 3 to the Lions. C.J. Henderson, number 9 to the Jaguars. A.J. Terrell, that was a hit, 16 to the Falcons. You got Damon Arnett, 19 to the Raiders. Noah Igbegnagene, 30th to the Dolphins. And then Jeff Gladney, rest in peace, at 31 the first round was a disaster for these corners.
And was it the second round, like Jalen Johnson and Trayvon
Diggs, and Fulton?
Yeah.
Now, there were some disasters in that round too, but it's just really interesting how that thing just kind of turned around really fast. And the guy who was picked fourth in the fourth round, he was probably the 8th or 9th corner picked, and he was a safety at Louisiana Tech, mind you. You know what I mean? And now he's the top one.
So my thoughts on the Snead thing when it comes to the Titans, I don't know if you heard me say this, but I have noticed with Rand that if he wants to do something, he may not do it that day, but he's going to find a way to do it. And I'm starting to think that he wants Snead, and that's why they keep dipping their toe in on the Snead thing, kind of like they kept dipping their toe in on the Hopkins thing. Like there was a report during the draft that the Titans, if they had moved up to 3, may have included DeAndre in the deal. And yet just kept kind of dipping his toe in on DeAndre, and I wonder if this is kind of the same thing. Like that he just even though he may not do it today, that I've just noticed that if he decides big picture he's going to do something, he's going to find a way to do it.
I mean, that's your typical man, right? When we decide that there's something that we want to do and we're convinced that it's the right thing to do, we're typically going to do it. So
some guys, though, just when they get that first roadblock, just kind of are like, well, all right, I'm out on that.
And that's why I said typically. But for the most part, as a man, when you're convinced that something is the right thing to do, you're going to do it. And I think that's really the case that you're alluding to here. Now, look, make no mistake about it. There's interest, but again, if the value is too much, then hey, look, going to stay away. But if that value comes into the range of where it's a deal that's reasonable to do, they're going to get it done. And I think that's exactly where you're at with the Snead issue. And I'm not saying that there's no interest, right? I'm just saying for now, because of where the value is, they've backed off.
What do you make of the report that Tre'Davious White's going to be visiting the Titans? Now they'll get to, do the full medical if he shows up, which will be the most important thing when it comes to him. But for me, I am saying no thank you because of how little he plays.
I think if you're relying on him to rejuvenate your secondary, you're crazy. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you're bringing him on knowing that there's other guys that you're going to draft and also that you may sign or trade for, I think it's a solid move. But it all depends, and this goes back to how we discussed the Mason Rudolph situation. It's the lens by which you look through. If you're looking at him to, come in to save stuff, that's not your guy. But if you're looking at him to come in and help, because, look, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a guy, a Louisville guy, right in your – he's going to be here. I think there's going to be interest in some other corners too. Obviously, I don't know which ones yet. Kyrie Jackson is one I gathered. There's some interest. Willie Drew, from Virginia State is another one. I know that they liked him at the Senior Bowl. So there are some guys that there's interest in, but White can't be he's not the savior.
No, I think PK said it best when he said, if you need a corner and you add Tre'Davious White, you still need a corner. And I think that's if they bring in Tre'Davious White and they give him, $3 million guaranteed with a bunch of incentives in there, and he ends up playing the whole season, that's great. But what they can't do is bring him in here and say, okay, we're good at corner, because that's how you end up with Trey Avery back there on the field in a role that Trey Avery doesn't need to be in.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So I also have one other thought on the Snead thing. The two players tagged, Snead and Higgins, I think that neither team wants that player on their team, but they want the pick in exchange for what a player of that caliber is valued at. And so the same reasons that they don't want that player anymore are because we'd rather have the pick and get the younger version of T. Higgins, or we'd rather have the pick and draft another corner and coach him up like we did Snead and McDuffie and those guys. That's why teams are not trading. It's like, well, why would we could just use this pick to draft T. Higgins? Why would we need to? And I think I am fascinated by how these are going to work for both sides. I think Kansas City has probably built it in that 1 year for Snead on the tag, fine. I don't know when the Bengals have to pay Jamar Chase. I don't know if the traditionally cash-poor Bengals are going to be able to pay all those guys this year.
Yeah, no, and you make a good point, and that's something, when you look at the Chiefs, right? So what Matt Verderam, what he said was, they're going to have to pay guys next year, right? I mean, you got Justin Reed. They could extend him and move him down some, but you're going to have Creed Humphrey. I would imagine Trey Smith is going to be eventually, looking to get paid. You got Nick Bolton. So, and these are all young players, right?
Yep.
And I think you got to weigh that. And just like you mentioned with the Bengals, with Jamar Chase, I mean, are you able to have two top-level receiver contracts on the same pay scale as a Cincinnati Bengal? I don't think so. Now, if you're talking about the Cowboys or somebody, okay, that's a different ball game. But I think that both of these teams, they're like, okay, we put the tag on them. We'll hold on to them. If we could trade them, great. If not, we'll get another year of production at a premium, price. It's going to cost us, but then you get your comp pick.
Jerry, though, surprisingly cheap when it comes to spending cash. The Browns that just gave Jerry Jeudy $41 million guaranteed, they play by a different cap, I guess. I don't know. By the way, did you see the video of Mark Schlereth after Jerry Jeudy got traded?
And it's interesting because you normally don't see former players try to assassinate a current player's game like that.
I mean, just killed him.
But that's the second guy that he got into it because, Steve Smith was about to give him that work during one of those games.
TD is with us. Coming up next, TD brought up, and this is just a fact, the Titans are not at Joe Alt's pro day, and TD says that the Titans, from what he's gathered, like J.C. Latham, and I am starting to see an action from the Titans. We'll do that next with TD. It's the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
All right, so the Titans, Mel, this past week made some moves along the offensive line. They signed center Lloyd Cushenberry, a former third-round pick who became a very, very good player for the Denver Broncos. Got a big money deal. They also cut Andre Dillard, their left tackle signing from a year ago, 3-year deal. That lasted a total of just 1 year in Tennessee, which all of a sudden tells you it is time to address the left tackle spot. And they go with Joe Alt from Notre Dame, a player that you and I have been talking about plenty on the show, Mel. And while we had spent a lot of time talking about the idea of him being the 5th overall pick to the Chargers and converting to right tackle, we don't have to worry about that in this scenario, as he would go to Tennessee and play in his natural spot of left tackle, giving Will Levis a left side of the line that would be Peter Skoronski and Joe Alt. That right there would be quite a left side of the line for the Titans to build around going forward.
Yeah, you got to get that for Will Levis. Will Levis showed that he could maybe be a really good quarterback in this league. And last year he was not protected. There's no question about it. With Joe Alt, of all the projections and all the mock drafts, you see teams taking players. This is the one that makes the most sense to you because he is, as you say, a left tackle. That's what they need. Will Levis is all about now making him great. We talked about Brian Callahan coming in as the head coach. That's what you have to do. You get a young quarterback, make him great. Daniel Jones with the Giants, do everything you can to help him. We talked about that with getting the receiver. Here with Joe Alt, the left tackle for Tennessee, makes the most sense of just about any pick in the top 10 of the first round.
There you go. Mel Kiper and Field Yates. TD with us for the TD Power Hour. So, TD, I want to make sure I don't misquote you on any of this. Joe Alt's pro day today was at Notre Dame, and the Titans did not send the GM, the coach, or the offensive line coach.
No, what I'm saying is, to my knowledge, there isn't a presence there. Jim Nagy is a guy, obviously, senior bowl director, but he typically combs through, like the schools send him a list of executives and coaches, et cetera, that attend these pro days. And he didn't mention Titans coaches. Bill Callahan didn't mention, Rand Carthon or Brian Callahan either. So from that, I said, okay, well, it doesn't look like they're there.
Okay, and then you've also said that the Titans, and this could be independent of their feelings on Alt, the Titans, to your knowledge, are high on Alabama's right tackle, J.C. Latham.
Like many other teams are.
Yep, and Trevor's high on J.C. Latham, too.
Yeah.
So, I am starting to see kind of the action. I'm wondering if the Titans are thinking of a trade down here. That if the Titans, with all the holes, and they've brought guys in on visits, like Jerome Baker, like Andrus Peat, like Marcus May, like they're going to with Tre'Davious White, but they haven't signed a lot of guys. They did sign Sebastian Joseph yesterday, but I am wondering if the Titans are looking at their holes and thinking, if that Alt pick is there, somebody's going to want it, or somebody's going to want J.J. McCarthy, or somebody's going to want that spot. So even though Alt's a great prospect, let's trade out of that and pick up some extra picks so that we can fill the holes with a lot of these guys you've been talking about that I'm like, will they be there day 3? And you're like, no, they probably won't be. And I'm wondering if that might be the Titans' initial plan here.
That could be a part of the mix. I would imagine it is. And you remember when Rand was asked at the combine, about that pick being up for available, and he didn't hesitate to say that, he'll entertain calls. Obviously, he didn't entertain any to that point, but yeah, I mean, I think you look at that. You look at pick number 4. Monty Ossenfort is advertising that the for sale sign is there. You know what I mean? So there's a lot, and I think a lot of this, it's really interesting because, don't rule out Latham going to the Chargers, right? Because they already have their left tackle. Jim Harbaugh was, he's always looked into being able to run the ball, protect his quarterback, and obviously weapons, right? You want to have weapons, but guess what? This draft is deep at wide receiver also, so that's another area where I could see them going Latham because, you have Slater, he'd be your right tackle. Now you got your bookends.
So I still think the Chargers almost have to go wide receiver.
No, I don't think there's a have to do anything. Just like a lot of people think the Titans have to go left tackle. They don't have to do that because this draft is full of players at both positions. And obviously, Quentin Johnson, look, year 1 was not good. Mm-hmm. Joshua Palmer, the Tennessee alum. He's a solid player. I mean, look, they could get another receiver at the top half of the second round too.
I'm just thinking if I've got Justin Herbert and I have the opportunity to get Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, I almost feel like I have to take it. But
understand that's not necessarily Harbaugh's first thing that he looks for. He wants to be able to run the football, work, play action, right? Protect the quarterback. I don't think Justin Herbert is going to throw the ball 40 to 50 times. We've seen what that results in. Not much. A turnover in the fourth quarter that ends up losing the game typically. So, I think they're going to work on protecting him, and that's why I think O-line is absolutely in play there.
Do you believe when it comes to if you were GM of the Titans, if Alt was there at 7, I'm saying, just take him. Even if you're getting great trade offers, I mean, obviously if you get offered Joe Burrow, we have a different discussion. But, anything that's not what would seem unreasonable, I'd say take him because I think he's such a promising prospect at a position that is such a premium. This is what it's worth to suck so bad for, is to get a player like this. I hate the idea that they could not take Alt with the 7th pick.
I mean, I saw you had mentioned, of the Vikings 11 and 23. Man, you take that. You take that. You absolutely take that. That's insane value right there. You take it.
With a franchise pillar player like Thomas Dimitrov called Alt.
Okay. And, I understand, Thomas Dimitrov said that, but you could get 2 franchise caliber players at 11 and 23. I mean, me personally, I would much rather have Talise Fuaga and Keon Coleman, or Talise Fuaga and Darius Robinson, or Talise Fuaga and Chop Robinson. I would much rather have the 2 players than Joe Alt, to be honest.
Sure, that's like Jack Conklin and Derrick Henry over Laramie Tunsil.
Essentially.
And I just look at the idea of drafting Alt and knowing that he'll go through some growing pains as a rookie, because they do. And again, we've talked at length about the practice time, but it's almost like with Bill Callahan coaching him, if you could stick him at left tackle, you're paying your center $1 gazillion, and you've got a right guard who should blossom with players around him and good coaching. I'm like, to have that and to not have to worry about it and to check all the boxes. I mean, there's a certain level of anxiety that I think I would have kind of washed away.
You wake up in the morning with a level of anxiety.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Listen, man, even though Jesus walks with you, you still have anxiety, man. Everything is going to be all right.
Okay. With that, your phones, 615-737-1025. Your questions for TD free agency draft on the table. We also have not gotten to the Titans' acquisition of Sebastian Joseph, formerly Sebastian Joseph Day. We will do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. The TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, do you have a thought or do you want to go to the phones?
To the phones.
Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mike is up next here. He's going to kick us off here on the TD Power Hour. Mike, you're on with TD.
Hey, guys, thanks. TD, I think it could just be because we're in an area where, like, our immediate need screams wide receiver and tackle. But I haven't heard a ton about the cornerbacks, especially in, like, the first round. The name like Kool-Aid McKinstry comes to mind. But what are some other corners that are out there that might be more of a viable option for us in the second round and then maybe in the fourth?
Yeah, so second round, there are a few. You're looking at Enos Rakestraw. He could be there. He's a longer corner. I tell you, watching that, I watched a few Mizzou games last night, man. Just that whole defense, they get at it, man. And he's another one that does. They have a safety and a D tackle in addition to Darius Robinson, too. So you got him. Round two, I mean, there's a chance Kool-Aid McKinstry falls in that top part of the second round as well. I think, you know, right there you're looking at.
Well, doesn't he have a Jones fracture he's recovering from?
Yeah, but, I mean, he's had that the whole time, and he worked out at Alabama, and it was actually his times were good. You know, obviously that's something that you want to get fixed, but, I mean, first-round value, second round. I'm just saying he's going to be there. I'm not saying turn the card in. The caller asked about who would be there. So those are two names that come to play right away. Now, there's another one. I wouldn't say second round, but you're looking at, you know, in that 106 range, and it's Kalen Carson. And I posted on Twitter a 4-play sequence of he and Keon Coleman. You watch that Florida State versus Wake Forest game, those dudes were getting at it. Keon, make no mistake, got his, but Kalen Carson got his as well. And this is another longer corner, physical man type of corner. And he's a guy that when I asked Coleman who was the best corner he faced, Keon said Carson. You know, so you do have that. And obviously, again, we'll continue to mention Cam Hart, Kyree Jackson as names as well. This draft is deep at the cornerback position.
Scott asks, TD, how would it affect your personal or working relationship with the Titans if they used you to put out misinformation to throw other teams off their trail?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then one other name that just popped into my mind, TJ Tampa out of Iowa State, 6'2", like 195, another long corner. He's an intriguing one, too, in the second round. As far as you could go Mike Sanistro out of Michigan, too. Like, names are just popping into my mind now. But as far as that texter, yeah, I don't think it would impact my personal relationship or anything like that. I mean, it's a part of the business, right? And all I could do is relay information that, you know, I get that I know that I could share. So, no, I mean, it's not something I would take personally. You hate that, you know, someone would, you know, that would be the case if it were, but no.
Well, I mean, I think about it, too. Like, when Barry Trotz comes on the show, there's a chance, like, especially around the trade deadline time, there's a chance he could be lying. You know, when he says, like, oh, I'm going to trade this guy. If we don't get a contract, I'm going to trade him. And, like, he might be lying, but he's probably also saying the same thing to the other guy's agent. And
here's the other thing. Things change, right? Things change. You know, because I remember, you know, the one game, I think it was in November at some point, you asked about Vrabel going to Ohio State, and I leaned into the phone and was like, he's not going anywhere. Because that was really the sentiment at the time. But things change. You know what I mean? So that's another thing.
Although I do have to say this. The one thing about the Titans when it came, and I'm talking about that, like, specific, the coach thing, they kind of lost. I believed them on the malarkey thing, and so after that, I do have a hard time. You know, like when they were very strong. And I said it too, like, I do not think Diana Rossini was not telling the truth when she wrote that article that there is no way they're moving on from Vrabel. There's no way they're trading Vrabel. I don't think Diana was not relaying exactly what she had been told. But I had lived through the malarkey situation, so I was like, I don't know if I can trust that. Mm-hmm. And then, to your point, the Titans changed their mind. Will on Music Row says, TD, who is somebody after the first round that if you were in the war room, you would be banging on the table for after the first round?
Xavier Legette, man. Like, I'm jumping on the table. I might stomp through that thing for him if I was in the war room. Another one, Darius Robinson. I think, he's someone I would definitely – Kool-Aid McKinstry. Those are three names right off the bat that I would definitely stomp on the table for as guys that could conceivably be there at 38.
One texter says, TD, what is the likelihood of the Titans aggressively trading down in the first and second rounds to accumulate as many top 100 picks as possible?
It's definitely a possibility. Now, I don't think they're going to move back too far off of 7 because there is, there's 5 to 6 guys that they feel are premier players. And, the good thing is the quarterbacks will come in and adjust that 5 to 6 guys, right, as far as availability is concerned. But I could see them moving back. If they could acquire, that third-round pick, recouping that would really help. And that's something where, you could get a pretty good corner, or you could get that safety that you may want to get or something along those lines.
One texter says, TD, if you were a GM in the league, would you be looking at the J.J. McCarthy smoke as real fire, or would you think that everybody's lying about how much they like McCarthy?
I would go somewhere between the two, to be honest with you. That's what I would try to land, somewhere between the two, whereas I would take heed to it and have that as a part of the, understanding, but I wouldn't preach it and look at it as gospel.
I mean, I cannot imagine that they will trade up to the 4th pick to take J.J. McCarthy. If you told me that they traded to the 9th pick to take J.J. McCarthy, okay.
Or the 7th.
Or the 7th. The 4th pick.
Yeah, that's a little much.
I have a hard time with. B-Man is up next here on the program. B-Man, you're on with TD.
Hey, TD, I just want I got a theory at this pick 7. Since you said there was nobody there at the pro day for Joe Alt, I think I was showing their hands that that's exactly who they're going to take. Since there's nobody there, they don't want anybody else to know what they're doing. It just kind of seems like it's chess over checkers.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, and that's the thing that's so crazy and fun about the draft is there's anything that's said, like there's so many ways that you could look at it. You never really know until the card is turned in, and I think when you look at that, it could be that hey, you know what, their recruit or evaluation is so buttoned up that they don't have to be there. They feel they don't have to. How many times have you seen players who didn't go on top 30 visits get drafted by the team, and they get up there and say, man, I had no clue this team had interest in me.
So I was told that the Keith Bullock pick, Syracuse had played in the Music City Bowl the year that Keith Bullock came out, and that they had already loved Keith Bullock, and that Syracuse practiced at the Titans facility, and they watched him. And they decided right then and there that they liked him, and they didn't want anybody else to know because they were picking very, very late in the first round because they had been in the Super Bowl. They didn't want anybody to know that they were in on Keith Bullock, but they had made up their mind at the Music City Bowl that they liked Keith Bullock. And so I think about that all the time with stuff like this.
Yeah, no, sometimes that's how it works, man.
One texter says, TD, what is the likelihood at this point that L'Jarius Sneed will not be traded until after the draft?
Oh, I can't see him waiting until after the draft because if they do that, then and they get that 3rd-round pick or whatever it would be the following year, why not just keep him and get the similar compensation, in the comp pick formula, however that should work. So I think if he gets traded, the draft is the deadline.
I think so too. They want the player now.
Exactly.
They don't want to wait on that. One texter says, TD, if the Titans were to not go offensive line in the first round but stay at 7, who's in play?
Not offensive line. Okay, so I think, Dallas Turner's in play. I think Brock Bowers would be in play. And, again, we're saying not offensive line. I think Neighbors will be in play if he's there. Trade back's in play too, though.
Odunze not?
I don't get the feeling that they're as high on Odunze as others are. But, I mean, I could be mistaken.
Okay. TD, as always, with the TD Power Hour. And, of course, the TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, tell us about ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
No doubt about it. ESPN Bet Sportsbook is now live in Tennessee. They are ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. It's the exclusive sports book of ESPN, and it has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan. New users, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download right now that app, ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text the TN Red Line at 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details. One thing real quick, I want to shout somebody out too. Quentin Patton, he's a local. He went to the NFL that the 49ers drafted him, but he and his crew for the Elite 3 Foundation, they have a 7-on-7 team. He invited me to watch them in the tournament. Listen, if you love football and you want to see young high school level players competing, definitely stay tuned to the 7-on-7 scene, man. It was a dope experience. I was there for 2.5 hours. So, QP, shout out to you, baby.
I'll tell you this right now. If you told Floyd about that, he'd be there.
Yep.
Because if it was something like that, he would be there to check it out. And that's a good note for everybody that does love football. TD, great stuff as always,
For
man.
sure. Appreciate you.
Yep, Teron Davenport, as always, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Coming up next, it's always about the money, right? My grandfather had a saying. He said it's always about the money. And when they say it's about the principle, it's really about the money. But there is one case where I'm riding with someone because I don't think it is about the money. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So I believe in the 2024 Tennessee Volunteers. Again, not to get into bracket talk of, oh my God, I want this team to win because they're in my bracket. But I do have Tennessee in the national championship game, and I'm sure Tennessee fans don't like it. In fact, I'm sure everybody doesn't like it. I've come to grips with the fact that people just don't like things that I do or say. I don't understand it. I'm not going to try to understand it, but it kind of is what it is. I can see Tennessee fans saying, oh no, now we're jinxed. And I can see anti-Tennessee fans saying, oh no, Jared, you can't be so stupid to drink the Kool-Aid. But I am. I believe in this team. I think this team will go to the Final Four. And I am going to guarantee that the Tennessee Volunteers make it to the Sweet 16. Last year, I guaranteed that they wouldn't beat Duke. This year, I'm guaranteeing Tennessee to the Sweet 16. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this team has the makings of a special team. Now, you may crap on women's basketball, though it is becoming incredibly popular now, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And Caitlin Clark is on fire, so not as many people talk bad about women's basketball as they used to back in the day. But I was part of a team, I was with a team that went to the national championship game. And I know what it takes for a group to be successful in the month of March. And Rick Barnes yesterday was meeting with the media, and he was asked a question about Coach K and Roy Williams and Nick Saban, but his answer in reference to his team is the number one reason why I believe in this group.
Over the last few years, we've seen, kind of change into the guard. A lot of the old coaches stepping away, Roy, K, Boeheim, even Saban on the football side. And some of them said, kind of the fun has gone out of it because of the NIL and the constant turnover, the transfer portal. How much of an impact is that had on coaching? And, is it still fun?
Well, it's always fun when you got a group of guys that you love being with every day. The one thing that I read an article where Coach Saban had made the comment that after his team lost, the way they acted, I thought about that immediately after our game against in the SEC tournament against Mississippi State. I walked in the locker room. The first person I saw that beat me off the court was Zakai Ziegler, and he was crying. And I think as long as you've got players that that really care and they want to really work at being the very best they can be, I think if players are just playing for the sheer money of it, I think it would drive all coaches crazy.
Okay. He's telling you, look, I get NIL's part of the game, but my team's not about the money. My team, look, they get paid. They care about money, but they're not all about the money. And the reason I think this is really important is because in my experience in March, the way to go deep is to, first off, you have to have a good team, right? Like when I was at Louisville in my 4 years, we went to the national championship game, went 14-18 because we had a bad team. We went to the Sweet 16, and we lost the second round of the tournament. And the only time that we had a truly great team was that first year that I was there and we went to the national title game. So that's the first thing. You had to have a good team. But that experience that I had in 2009 was, I think I always tell people, it was a group of 30 people all pulling the rope in the same direction. It didn't matter if it was our star shooting guard or if it was the last person on the bench. Everybody was doing everything in unison. It didn't matter if it was me as an equipment guy. It didn't matter if it was our trainer. It didn't matter if it was our broadcasters. Again, everybody was pulling the rope in the same direction. And it wasn't about the money. And that team had the number one overall pick in the WNBA draft and Angel McCoughtry on it. And so I'm just telling you right now, this Tennessee team has what that team had. This Tennessee team is a good team. I think we can all agree. Yes, they lost to Kentucky at the end of the year, and yes, they got humbled on Friday at the SEC tournament. But the most important thing this time of the year is you have to believe, and you have to believe in each other. As in, the players have to believe in the coach. The coach has to believe in the players. The players have to believe in each other. Everybody has to believe. I think Tennessee believes. You have to play for each other, which is very important because, again, this time of year, for the best player on the team. Everybody has to understand this is our best defensive stopper. Everybody on the team has to understand if I'm going into the game, this is my role and this is why I'm going into the game. And Tennessee has that. I have to tell you right now, Josiah Jordan-James is not going to fire up shots tonight when he knows that Dalton Connect has to get the ball. You have to have that in order to be a great team. And in the month of March. Because there's going to be games where one guy doesn't have it, you got to move to the next guy. And there are going to be opportunities where a guy like Vescovi is going to want to take a shot, or a guy like Ziegler is going to want to take a shot, or a guy like, but they know that, hey, Dalton's the guy, got to get him the ball. And you can't worry about the ego. It has to be winning, winning, winning. And I've been a part of teams that winning wasn't the number one thing, and I've been a part of a team where it was. And the team that I was ended up in the national title game. The next thing is you have to play great defense and you have to rebound the ball. And this team does that. This team with Adu in the paint, Awaka off the bench, Meshack on the ball, they play great defense and they can rebound. And then finally, the thing about this tournament, every single one of these coaches, whether it's Tom Izzo, Rick Pitino, Coach K, whomever, they will tell you that this tournament will humble you. This team's been humbled. This team is not walking in tonight to play St. Peter's thinking that their farts don't smell because they got embarrassed on Friday. And that's why I said after they beat South Carolina to win the SEC regular season championship, I said, look, this team needs to lose in the tournament. Now, I was saying more lose on Saturday instead of Friday so you get the one line, but they might as well be a one seed. It's fine. You're playing Purdue and Detroit. It's fine. This team's humbled. They have what it takes. And again, I know what it takes. You know how I know that the team that I was a part of got humbled? We got humbled because we lost by 39 points in the Big East championship game to UConn. Now, that was when UConn was on that run of like 100 straight victories. We got beat by 39 points by Connecticut and then got beat by 22 in the national championship game. But what happened was we thought we were going to be a 2 seed. We ended up being a 3 seed. We thought we were going to be a 2 seed going to Bowling Green. Instead, we were a 3 seed, and we got sent to Baton Rouge, where LSU had made 4 straight Final Fours, and they were the 6 seed. We got screwed by the committee. And it bound everybody together. And that was the moment that we got humbled. Tennessee got humbled on Friday. That's a big deal. So when I hear, again, in a society that we live in that's all about the money all the time, I know from my experience that in March, it's about the team. And I'll tell you right now, when Rick Barnes tells you, hey, I get NIL could be a pain in the ass for some of these other guys, but it's not for me because my team is worried about basketball, that is a great sign. So I am guaranteeing Tennessee to the Sweet 16. And I've told you guys, I think Tennessee's going to the national championship game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I'm going to do the one thing that I beg everybody not to do. I did it, so I'm going to do it. And we'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. By the way, speaking of success in the women's tournament, congratulations to the Vandy women's basketball team. Ian, I know you didn't stay up late last night to watch it, but I did.
And they look pretty solid, huh?
Well, I mean, they gutted it out at the end last night against Columbia.
Saw some late big shots, pretty key, yeah.
I give Shea Ralph and her group credit. They got Kevin DeMille on the staff over there. I've known him. He was a manager at Connecticut when they beat us by 39 and then beat us by 22 when I was at Louisville. I've known him for 15 years. And he's a great guy. He's an assistant coach on that staff. They got a great coaching staff over there. I am very happy for them. And tomorrow, tune into 94.9 The Fan as they take on Baylor in the women's NCAA tournament. Pregame will be at 4:45, tip-off at 5 o'clock, and coverage will be available on 94.9 The Fan's app and at 949thefan.com. Jake will have the call, so we're looking forward to that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. When did the bracket become a thing? We don't do this for any other sport ever. Nobody ever tells you, well, I had the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals in my bracket. And the bracket is only a big deal for, 1 month? We don't talk about brackets in April. We don't talk about them in May, June, July. We don't sit around Thanksgiving and talk about who was in our Sweet 16. And what's the deal with everybody wanting to talk about their bracket for a 2-week period? It's like people feel the need to tell you, well, I had them going to the Final Four and they lost in the first round. Congratulations to you. Nobody cares, and you know nothing about basketball. So you know that's how I feel about talking about your brackets, folks. Whatever you do not sit there and say, oh, my God, Dayton and Nevada are playing right now, and I've got Dayton in my bracket, so I want Dayton. Nobody cares. La, 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 la. Nobody wants to hear it. So I filled out a bracket today. Ian, you want to hear my picks?
Not really.
No, you don't. But I do have some just takes, and so I'm going to get these out. So again, I guess I'm kind of doing what I absolutely detest, but it's more about the take than it is the bracket. And I don't root for any of this stuff to happen. This is just what I think is going to happen, and then I move on. So here you go. Number 1, I have Tennessee in the national title game, and I am drinking the Kool-Aid. One texter into the text line was like, you're going to say, I can't believe I drank the Kool-Aid when Tennessee gets beat. Maybe. But I think this year's team is different. Plus, Colorado State, Creighton, Purdue, they got a coach who craps their pants more than Rick Barnes does in the month of March. Tennessee to the national championship game. I have Wisconsin, by the way, getting to the Final Four, and that's how Tennessee ends up in the national title game. Number 2, I have Kentucky out in the second round against Texas Tech. I don't think Kentucky plays any defense, and I think they get totally disjointed at times. And while that Reed Shepherd is the truth, he didn't shoot the ball that much out there. And so what's going to happen? And again, nobody gets in trouble for things that don't happen on this show, but there are consequences when you do not meet expectations. If Kentucky doesn't get to the second weekend, and I'm right, and they lose to Texas Tech, that Calipari hot seat is going to be on fire. Now, I don't think they'll fire him. And the only reason I don't think they'll fire him is because it would be $30 million, and whoever they'd hire would be an unknown commodity, whereas Cal is a known quantity. But it doesn't mean that they shouldn't. I mean, Kentucky basketball has to have standards. And so when Kentucky loses in the second round of Texas Tech, and a game that all of us will put our hands over, oh, my God, how could you? Oh, my God. I can't wait. I can't wait. Houston's a 1 seed. A&M beats them in the second round. You want to know why? Because I went to the A&M Kentucky game on Friday, and I just think A&M's got that juice. Tyrese Radford, he looked like little LeBron out there for A&M. Give me A&M. Grand Canyon. What the hell, Grand Canyon? Grand Canyon, in my bracket, beats Alabama, a 4 seed, and goes to the Sweet 16. Couple of thoughts here. Number 1, Bryce Drew is a good coach. And yeah, that last year at Vandy was a disaster. But a lot of that was on bad luck. And I think if anybody else except for doofus Malcolm Turner had been the athletic director, they would have understood the context behind that bad year. They would have kept Bryce Drew, and Bryce Drew would be in the NCAA tournament every year at Vanderbilt, the same way he's in the NCAA tournament every year at Grand Canyon. Plus, I think I've watched Alabama basketball play like 4 games this year. I don't think I've seen them win a single time. Like, I know they were the number 1 seed last year in the tournament, and they ended up getting beat in the second round. I don't think I've seen them win a single game this year. Granted, I don't watch a ton of college basketball, but, I mean, they looked like crap the other night in the SEC tournament. Tennessee went in there and beat them. Nah. Wisconsin goes to the Final Four. Why? Because I was impressed with how they beat Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. And then I'll say Auburn beats UConn because it's so hard to repeat as champions. And Bruce Pearl, if there ever was a Dragon Slayer, It's Bruce Pearl. Auburn beats UConn. Illinois beats Auburn, gets to the Final Four, and wins the national title. And so I've got Illinois and Tennessee in the title game, and I have Illinois cutting down the nets. I hope all those things happen, by the way. And if Bryce Drew gets to the Sweet 16, I will finger wag everybody and say, I told you so. To your phones, as promised, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. One texter says, you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. What does that mean? I mean, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but what does that have to do with any of this? Dustin in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, who has been, every time we've talked basketball, which is not often on the show, every time Dustin has texted in, and he's been like, talk about the Cats, Jared.
Hoptown, baby.
And I have no idea if that's how Dustin talks, but I just assume. Sorry about that, Dustin, if that's not how you talk. Talk about the Cats. Cats can win it all, Jared. C-A-T-S, Cats, Cats, Cats. He says, Dillingham is better than Shepherd, shows how much you pay attention to my Cats. Dustin, let me just say this, babe. I went to the game on Friday, and in the first half, Reed Shepherd, that dude was the truth. He was the truth against Tennessee last Saturday. And in the second half, for whatever reason it was, he didn't want to shoot. And I don't know what that was. Now, Dillingham's good. Reeves is good. Edwards kicked the crap out of Tennessee. But Reed Shepherd, I mean, he's like Woody Harrelson's character out there. He can ball. Cody in Portland says, can't wait for your I can't believe I drank the Kool-Aid on the Vols Go Cats. Cal better make the Final Four or he has to go. We'll see. By the way, this is such a sweet draw for Kentucky. Here you go. Oakland, who, again, the basketball Benjamins out there like Joe seem to think Oakland can beat Kentucky tonight. Texas Tech, By the way, NC State is an 11 seed. I heard Stephen A. Smith we talk about what Jared doesn't know about college basketball. I heard Stephen A. Smith talking on Monday about the bracket. He's like, and I know NC State has had a good season. And I'm like,
they had good 5 games.
NC State was going to fire their coach.
I do wonder how that transfers when you win your tournament like that and then have a few days off and then start back up.
Well, for Kimball Walker in Connecticut, it meant a national title.
Yeah.
For other teams, I've seen teams run through a conference tournament, and I'm like, this team cannot be stopped. The 2008 Pitt Panthers remind me, or the team that pops into my head when I think of this. And then all of a sudden, they're gone in the first weekend, and it's like, damn, they were cutting the nets down, and they were on fire, and they were celebrating, and whew. UConn hasn't lost a neutral site game in like 2 years. Ken Pom says they're the most efficient team ever. No one is beating them. Let me say this about UConn. I watched them play in the tournament last year, and they played Arkansas in the Sweet 16. And at this point in time, I had a rooting interest in Arkansas, and I watched the game thoroughly. And as I was watching the game, I just saw the beauty and finesse that UConn played with, and I said, this team's going to win the national title. And if that's the same UConn team, then good for them. But the committee doesn't think so because they crapped all over the Big East when they went in there. Cody, who, by the way, said the Cal has to go if they don't make, followed up with a, go Cats, baby, with a bunch of exclamation points. Go Cats. Dustin says, I've called several times. You know I'm not some bumpkin. Haters going to hate. Ian's the one who can recognize people by their voices. Me, Adam in Portland calls every day. He could come right up to me, and I may not recognize, the voice. Just you got to talk to Ian. Ian, do you know if Dustin in Hopkinsville talks like a bumpkin?
Dustin doesn't ring a bell.
Sorry, Dustin, but it is what it is. We're thinking about you.
I'm sure he's called before, so I apologize, Dustin. It just, nothing's coming to me.
By the way, since I guaranteed Tennessee is going to make the Sweet 16, Ian, you say that we have got some collecting to do on the guarantee chart.
Well, you had from what I can count, 3 guaranteed, or I should say open-ended guarantees involving Jerry Stackhouse and Vanderbilt. And so now that there has been a decision made with the Stackhouse's future, we can go ahead and put a bow on some of those, I suppose.
Okay, what are the Stackhouse guarantees we nailed?
Okay, let's see. We guaranteed. Sorry, Jared guaranteed. Let's see. This was on Jared versus Joe, Wednesday, April 5th. Stackhouse will not win more than 4 tournament games compared to Dusty May. That was correct. We have.
So wait a minute. You're telling me I was a Dusty May fan in April of last year?
That is correct.
I just want the record to show that because I have a very good feeling in my gut that Louisville is going to hire Dusty May as the coach. And I've been telling everybody I wanted Dusty May since last year. And now I'm glad that there is legitimate documented proof that I have been a Dusty May fan for a year. Thank you.
Okay.
So
yep.
we got that.
You got that. And then Jared.
Which means Joe was probably arguing that Stackhouse is better coach than Dusty May.
There was probably something going on there because it was said during Jared versus Joe. This was also said during Jared versus Joe in November that Jared guarantees that Stackhouse will never make the tournament at Vandy.
Thank you.
And then we also have Jared guarantees that Vandy will fire Stackhouse at the end of the season. That was said Friday, February 23rd.
Okay. Bang, bang, bang. Now, what are our current open-ended guarantees?
Let's see. Open-ended guarantees. We have one Preds open-ended guarantee that is Jared guarantees that Alexander Carrier will not be on the team in 2 years. That was said on Tuesday, May 31st of 2022. So you have approximately 2 months for that.
So you told me that if they make the Cup final, then I technically lose. We all know I'm talking about 2 seasons, but if they extend their season past May and he's on the team in June.
Yeah, you were not anticipating the Preds making the playoffs or some type of long playoff run. So that would be an incorrect. And then Jared guarantees that week 1 of the NFL will be the Chargers at the Chiefs. Don't want to burn a premium game week 1 of Thursday Night Football. This was said Monday, February 12th.
Okay. Well, take that, Joe, in all those Jared versus Joe guarantees. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is a rumor, a big rumor, that, quite frankly, is not so much of a rumor as much as the Arizona Cardinals said it. They want to trade the 4th pick. And I'm going to tell you exactly why, because I feel the same way. We'll do that next here on Stillman and Company and what it means for the Titans. Let's talk Twice Daily. Twice Daily is great. If you're like me tonight, it's hockey, basketball, get on over to Twice Daily, get some made-to-order pizzas or made-to-order wraps, and get all the drinks and the chips and everything else at Twice Daily, and then get back in front of the couch to watch games tonight. And Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings and enter their sweepstakes and so much more. Try their new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download that Twice Daily app like I have, you can order ahead. So you can download the app, order ahead, go pick all that stuff up, and get your butt right back in front of the couch. Just like me. And at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they got the favorites. You really want to have the ballpark experience? Chicken fingers, tater rounds, and their new pretzels. That's right. Delicious. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
I'm a huge Marvin Harrison Jr. fan. I know Marvin Sr. really well. I played in, I think, 4 Pro Bowls with him. He grew up in Philly. He went to a rival high school. I just I know the kind of person and player Marvin was. And I'm a little surprised that Marvin Jr. is not, obviously didn't do anything at the combine, Bruce, and is not going to do a workout at the pro day. And basically, you're just going to use your evaluation based on the film that you saw from him the last couple of seasons at Ohio State. I don't like it. I think it's important for players. All these teams want to see players compete. I just now we have a pro day, and all the teams are going to roll into Columbus, Ohio, and or a number of them, and you're not going to work out at the pro day.
That was Rich Gannon. He was not happy yesterday on Sirius XM with Marvin Harrison Jr. saying, I'm not going to be working out. And so Monty Ossenfort, the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, came out yesterday and said, quote, there will be a big neon sign that says open, and I don't like it blinking. It messes with my eyes, but we're always going to be listening. Ossenfort joked Wednesday at a news conference alongside head coach Jonathan Gannon. I think we'll always have the conversation. We may or may not get to a point where a deal makes sense, whether it's at number 4 or anywhere we're picking, but we're always going to have the conversation. And if it makes sense and if it's attractive to building our team, then it's something that we'll certainly consider no matter where we're at in the draft. Cliff notes, the 4th pick can be yours. Now, timing is never an accident in the NFL. And Ian, do you want to take a guess as to why Monty Ossenfort wanted to broadcast to the world yesterday that he's willing to trade the 4th pick and why it's that time specifically?
Where are you going with this?
The owners' meetings are next week.
Okay.
So the owners are all going to be there. The GMs are all going to be there. The coaches are all going to be there. And guess what? Monty Ossenfort wants your owner to know you can have Marvin Harrison Jr. That's why they did this. And I'm going to tell you why I think they're doing it. Because they don't want to have to draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and I feel that way too. I don't like Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I recognize that he is a great prospect. And if the scouts and the board and the coach and everything else were like, oh my God, look at the talent. Sometimes with some of these players, you're put in a position where you don't want to draft them, but you have to draft them. Caleb Williams and the Bears, they have to draft Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams comes off, in my opinion, as kind of a chotch, but you have to take him because at the end of the day, it's like, well, we passed on C.J. Stroud last year, and this is supposedly a generational prospect, and we have to take him. I don't want him, but you got to take him. And when it comes to Marvin Jr., I think he's kind of the same way, where he's such a high-level prospect that you have to take him. Except that just like Caleb Williams, Marvin's got an attitude, and I don't think that that works in the NFL. You want to know why Marvin Harrison didn't compete at the Combine? Because he didn't have to. You want to know why Marvin Harrison didn't compete at Pro Day? Because he didn't have to. You want to know why Marvin Harrison didn't meet with reporters at the Combine? Because he didn't have to. Again, it's not that Marvin Harrison wouldn't have just done. I mean, he competed last year at Ohio State's Pro Day, and he wasn't even draft eligible. But this year he didn't want to do it. Why? Because I don't have to. Entitlement. I'm so good, I don't have to do Pro Day. And you know what? You're right. For somebody else's team. But not for mine. I want the guy who wants to compete. I want the guy. This is why I love Joe Alt so much. There's no questions about him. There's no questions about his durability. There's no questions about how much he loves playing football. With Marvin, I talked to a senior NFL insider today, and I probably shouldn't even share this on the radio because it's not my information to share. But apparently the scuttlebutt is that there's a worry that Marvin Sr. might be doing a little too much with Marvin Jr., and that may be scaring some people off. I don't want to draft Marvin Jr. Now, The Titans are picking 7th, so they're not going to have to draft Marvin Jr. But when I see Monty Ossenfort put up that and say, we're putting the neon sign up there, I think it is him saying that he doesn't want to have to draft Marvin Harrison, which is the same way I feel. Because I'm not a huge fan of the player, and then all this stuff, not competing at the Combine, not competing at Pro Day, I mean, that is just I'm not doing it because I don't have to. And I don't like it. I like the guys that like to compete. This is the NFL. I got on Will Levis yesterday because I'm like, hey, man, those selfies that we're posting out there in Mexico, is Calvin Ridley there with you? Is DeAndre Hopkins there? Tony Pollard? Tajay Spears? Chigakonkwo? Are we throwing passes out there? Like, I'll tell you right now. So I think that this is why Arizona's saying, hey, take this pick. Give us something good. You can draft Marvin Jr., and we'll take somebody else. Jules is up next. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What's up, Jules?
Hey, Jared. Thank you so much for taking my call. My question to you is, what remaining free agents would best fit the Tennessee Titans, and who do you think they must sign to actually be contenders this next year? I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think before, I can just throw you out a bunch of names on that. You know, they could sign Marcus May to play safety, and they could sign. I think that, if they're planning to trade back in the draft, which the tea leaves are starting to indicate, I think that they might. If they're thinking about trading back in the draft, then that changes the approach. The position I'm worried about, though, is inside backer, because I don't see anybody on the board that I like that they can sign at this point. And I have to imagine, I'm making an assumption here, and maybe it's not a fair assumption, but I have to assume that they didn't like the medicals on Jerome Baker. And that's why they passed on the 1 year, $7 million when it came to what Seattle was willing to give him. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Coming up next, it's a biggie tonight for the Predators. And, I mean, let me just say this. If they win tonight, I think we can be talking Stanley Cup. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
March Madness is always fascinating, and the NHL playoffs first round, just as fascinating. So who could be this year's NHL Cinderella like last year's Florida Panthers? How about the Nashville Predators? Yes, they are singing in the Music City. 13-0-2 after being walloped 9-2 at home by the Dallas Stars. They got everything going for themselves. They got offense. They got an excellent goaltender, UC Saros. Barry Trotz made some significant moves in the offseason, and now this team is finding its way. And that's the key thing, is finding your way when it matters most. There's no better time than when the playoffs begin. Anybody in the Western Conference that has to face the Nashville Predators in the first round, you should be scared. You should be really scared, because they're exactly the type of team that you look at playing and you think, okay, yeah, we finished ahead of them in the standings, but are we better than them? Right now, there is no better team that is playing at the level that the Nashville Predators are. We talked about the Edmonton Oilers on a 16-game winning streak, 13-0-2 in their last 15 games. Why are we not talking about the Nashville Predators?
There you go, Craig Button on TSN saying, hey, this could be the Cinderella team right here. Nobody wants to play them. Why are we not talking about them? Tonight on ESPN Plus, 6:30, the Predators and the Florida Panthers. Let me say this. The Florida Panthers are probably the top contender in the NHL. That when it comes to Stanley Cup and President's Trophy and everything else, the Florida Panthers, in spite of the fact that I don't think they have a lot of fans, the Florida Panthers are the creme de la creme. And the Nashville Predators tonight are going into their barn, and it is a measuring stick matchup. Just like Colorado, and you spanked them, and just like Winnipeg when you spanked them. And the difference is that while Colorado, I think, is certainly a cup contender, Winnipeg I'm not so sold on. While Colorado is absolutely a cup contender, they're not as much as Florida is. Florida, according to MoneyPuck.com, has the third highest odds to win the Cup at 5.2%, behind Vancouver at 10.4% and New York at 8.9%. And they've got a 12% chance of making the Cup final. This team is on pace for 111.3 points. That is 1/10 of a point behind Peter Laviolette and the Rangers. This is every bit a contender. And so let me just say this. If you win tonight, at first it was, hey, let's see if the Predators can dig themselves out of this hole and into a playoff spot. Check. Then, when they played Colorado, it was, okay, let's see if this team can actually go up against a good team. And let's see if this is just kind of a heater. Check. Then when they played Winnipeg last week, it was, okay, Winnipeg knows that they're going to get the red-hot Predators, and here, check. This is an Eastern Conference Cup contender with a big boy forward, with multiple big boy forwards, with an unbelievable lineup, goal scorers who kill the Predators, guys like Reinhart and Verhaeghe, and, I mean, again, that's before we not even talking about Barkov or Kachuk or those guys. This is, I mean, we're talking the creme de la creme. This is going up against the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Francisco 49ers or the Baltimore Ravens. That's what it is tonight. And Florida knows you're good. And they know they're not playing some random Western Conference team. They're playing a team that's on a 15-game point streak. So while I view this as nothing to lose for the Predators, and that's because I'm not going to shed any tears if the point streak snaps tonight, because, again, if you win 100 games in a row before the playoffs, the chances of you being able to win 100 games in the playoffs makes me a little nervous. But with nothing to lose, what there is to gain is the idea that you are a bona fide legitimate cup contender. And if you win tonight, I don't think there is any talk. I mean, when this team got good, even when it was obvious this team was probably going to make the playoffs around the trade deadline, and the Predators added Anthony Beauvillier and they added Jason Zucker, there was kind of this negative sentiment, at least from some parts of the fan base, that were Well, I know it's great that they've won some games, but Jared, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. This isn't about this season. This is about future seasons, and we shouldn't care about this, and we shouldn't be worried about that, and that's fine. Like, that's your business. That's fine. I'm telling you, you win tonight, you're every bit the cup contender everybody else is. And not only that, the other thing that it would tell me, if the Predators find a way to win tonight, is that they are incredibly dangerous in the playoffs because they are incredibly good on the road. Because they are awesome on the road. They beat Vegas on the road. They beat LA on the road. They beat Winnipeg on the road. They beat everybody on the road. And so if you keep winning on the road, you go into Florida, you win on the road, it's like you're going to be starting every single one of these series on the road. And so I think Florida knows this is a big matchup. Florida is not sitting there saying to themselves, oh, it's Nashville on a Thursday. No. I think they're like, hey, boys, this is going to be a tough one. And so, I am excited for tonight's game again. I don't think you have anything to lose. But, man, if they win tonight, I already feel this way now, but really, if they win tonight, there's nothing else that will happen this regular season that I'll care about. And I'll just say, get me to the playoffs, baby! Cody says, I cannot overstate how good it feels hearing serious discussions about the Predators measuring up next to the other great teams in the league. Look, man, you win tonight. That's a win over L.A., playoff team, on this point streak. A win over L.A., they're making the playoffs. A win over Vegas, they're making the playoffs. A win over Colorado, they're making the playoffs. A win over Winnipeg, they're making the playoffs. A win over Florida, if you win tonight, they're making the playoffs. And then we'll see Saturday and Tuesday because those teams are making the playoffs too. And you're not going to win every game. But you really, you're going to make the playoffs. You're going to start off on the road. And in order to win the cup, you're going to have to beat teams like this on the road. And I couldn't be more excited about this. The only thing I don't like is the ESPN Plus game, which means that in order to flip between that and the Kentucky basketball game or then the Tennessee basketball game, I'm going to have to exit the app and enter the new app, and, that'll drive me crazy, but it is what it is. 615-737-1025. Hal is in the booth. We will talk to him coming up next. FanDuel Sportsbook. That's my official sportsbook app. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game during the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And it says in the thing, talk about your favorite upcoming bets. Jared's bracket has the Tennessee Volunteers in the national title game losing to Illinois. So, a lot of people like to fade my picks. Do whatever you want. That's right. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Big one tonight for the Predators at Florida. And Hal Gill joins us now in the program presented by Duncan live from the rink tonight. And Hal, I don't know if there's any reason for you to be on this program because everything that's come out of my mouth over the last 2 weeks about the Nashville Predators has been insanely positive. And I mean, I am so happy with how this team is playing. I think these players are developing. I think that this team is a legitimate a legitimate contender. I mean, they're playing great against the good teams. They're playing great against the bad teams. But tonight, I feel, is a serious big boy measuring stick. If the Cup final, could you be this kind of team type of measuring stick game tonight? Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I think. You want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and I think right now, Florida would be my pick for the Cup favorite. I think this team is stacked. They got a good mix of size and speed, and they kind of have the whole package. So the Preds are going to be tested, and I'm really excited to see it. I'm proud of you, Jared. That you're positive, but I want you to know that's okay. It's okay to be positive. And I know you've been positive for quite some time as the team has given you something to be positive about, but it's okay. Just enjoy it.
Now, here's the next part where I'm going to go with this, which is I begged for a year, Hal. I said, you got to change the coach. And you got on my ass about this. But when I'm watching this team play right now, and Evangelista's the guy who stands out the most. The way he's playing and just some of the things these offensive zone shifts he has are just, it's impressive how much better he's gotten. But I think to me, the guy that it started with was Jeremy Lauzon. There are so many players on this team this year, Hal, that have gotten so much better. And again, I thought Lauzon didn't even belong on the team. And now that he's injured, the way he's played this year under Burnett, I'm like, oh, my God, what's this going to do to the team? And it's not just him. It's not just Evangelista. It's not just McCarron and Sherwood and Cole Smith and Jankowski. And this entire team has gotten better throughout the course of the year. How much of that is coaching?
Well, I think there's certain levels of coaching that you're obviously putting a system together that you think is going to that your skills set will thrive in, and so I think there's certainly Bruno's system is a different system, and they played it well, but I think there's a lot of buy-in from the players and committed to that system and committed to playing that way and being detailed with it. So that can go back to coaching as well, right? I mean, coaching isn't just X's and O's. You got to get the buy-in from the players, and Bruno's done that as well. So whether it's the players that have really committed to it and it's on them, or the coaching staff and Bruno for getting that buy-in, either way, there's success there, and I think that's kind of a give and take that you're looking for from a successful team.
Hal Gill's with us, presented by Duncan. Do you think that the buy-in that they have with this team and the whole notion that I feel of everybody, it seems like, is pulling the rope in the same direction, do you think they could have achieved that if Barry Trotz had not made the moves that he made in the offseason, shaking up the locker room, moving on from some people, and making sure to add characteristics and leadership qualities of guys he called serial winners in the offseason? Do you think that's possible without that?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, every team is built different, and there's some teams that are good because they have some bad eggs in there that kind of stir it up, and then there's other teams that everyone gets along and they have success that way. So every team dynamic is different, but right now I think they're all on the same page, certainly on the ice, and whether they're pushing each other's buttons or keeping each other accountable in behind the scenes, that's a part of it. But right now, it looks like Barry Trotz made all the right moves and pulled all the right triggers. And he just had the GM meetings, and I'm sure everyone's looking at Trotz saying, he's got to figure it out. He's doing it. It's not really a rebuild right now. It looks like they're a team that's legit. And so there's still some hockey left to be played, but I think everyone's looking at Barry Trotz right now like he's the man. He's got it figured out.
Hal, was there a moment when you won the Cup in Pittsburgh? Was there a moment that season, because you guys got off to a bad start and, kind of turned things around and ended up winning the Cup? Was there a moment during the regular season where you as a player performed maybe a game like this tonight against Florida and you said, we can do this? Like, we can win this championship. Was there a moment like that? Is that how that goes? Walk me through it.
Well, I think there's certain teams and certain players that have different mentalities. I think there's some players that just go through and try to win, and there's other players that are driven by it. And I think you need to have a little bit of a balance. You can't have every guy panicked about this is the biggest game of the year every time you get over. But there's certain tests that guys like Sidney Crosby will rise up to. Like, they want to play in those games. They want to play in the big games, and they want to prove themselves. And I think, for me, it was funny because I had never been on a team that every time they did a cheers, it was to the Stanley Cup. It was a total commitment to winning the Stanley Cup. There was nothing else that mattered. And so, it was a lot of talk about it. And I think some teams can handle that. Other teams just need to go out and roll with the punches and try to battle to get a playoff spot, try to battle to make the next round. And so I think there's certain levels of commitment, but I think the whole team has to be on that same page.
Hal Gill is with us, presented by Duncan. Would it be fair to say that the way he's playing right now as a prospect turn NHL player, that Luke Evangelista has popped and kind of reached that next level?
Yeah, I think he's doing some great things, and he's always had the skill set, but I feel like he'd make the play and he didn't have the escapability. He wasn't moving his feet to make the next play, and I think he's got that now, where he's seeing the play, making the play, and then accelerating out of it. And I think that's an adjustment that's hard to do for a guy. His whole life he's broken ankles and then just kind of skated away calmly because he was so good and so skilled. And now you're at the NHL level. Guys can recover quicker, and I think he's learned that. And now he's making those plays, like that play he made to the middle. He had to be patient and wait for Roman Josi to blow through and go to the net and bring the defender with him. And so he waits for it, and then he makes that cut, goes to the middle, and he's got the skill set once he gets into those areas to score like he did with that backhand. So I think he's just developing his game and learning what you need to do to be successful at each new level that you get to.
What do you make of the way Roman Josi's playing right now? I had the proclamation yesterday. Good. I think this is the best I've ever seen him play, and that's saying something, because for the last 7 years or however long I've been on the air here, he's been an incredible player, and this, I think, is the best I've ever seen him play.
Well, what's impressive to me is that, in the beginning of the season, Bruno was very open with, we need him to change his game. We need to get the forwards up in the play. We need to move the puck and have him join the rush, as opposed to him lugging the puck up and kind of not buying into that fast game. And I think he's changed his game. And, you could argue that he suffered a little bit because of it. His numbers were down because he had to change his game for the better of the team, which is what a great leader does. And now that he's figured it out, and now that the Preds are kind of all on the same page, now you're seeing him pop, and he's playing some of the best hockey I've seen, and he's doing it within a different structure. And so that's the fun part for me is, there's always times in a game where you go, they need something. They need a little pop. They need something to happen here. And more often than not, it's Roman Josi going out there and doing Josi things and making plays and getting the big goal or getting the big assist. And it's timely plays like that he impresses me the most. But just a great leader, and he's got to be my number one for Norris right now. There's some good players out there, but not as fully rounded as he is.
Hal Gill is presented by Duncan on the program. I asked Barry Trotz yesterday about kind of this, or on Tuesday, about this stretch of games that the Predators have right now in front of them, because while Florida is the creme de la creme right now in the NHL, there's also Detroit playoff team on Saturday, Vegas playoff team on Tuesday. And Barry said that when he was coaching the Capitals, they won 2 President's Trophies and fell flat in the playoffs because he felt like they were going weeks without playing meaningful games. With this team, it does seem like all these games have some kind of added juice to it. As a player, how important are these kind of measuring stick playoff preview games to keep everybody focused and locked in heading into the stretch run in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think you last game against what was the last game? My goodness,
the Scarbinis, the San Jose Sharks.
San Jose game. I've totally forgot about that game because I've been so fired up about that, but about this one. But the San Jose game, they started off and there was no jam in their game. There was no real excitement. They had to wait until the second period till they got that okay, quit messing around, boys. Like, we're just going through the motions right now. And then the second period, they started to play well, and then the third period, they just destroyed them. Well, I think it's hard to get that edge and keep that edge when the games don't matter as much. And I think San Jose, you saw a little flirting with that complacency, and I think that was a good sign that they rebounded from that. But I think going into the playoffs, you want to play big games because it's once you take away that edge, it's hard to get it back. And so, whether you're trying to put people behind you or climb the ladder in the standings, I think you have to, sometimes you have to trick yourself that, hey, this is a big game for every game because, once it slips a little bit and as a team, then it can slip a lot and it can fall away from you. And so I've been on teams that were great teams that we just kind of coasted through the end, and then the playoffs hit and it was, oh, baby, this is fast. And I've been on other teams where we're scratching and clawing, and then you get in the playoffs and it feels like every other game you played. So I think there's something to be said for that competitive nature that you have, and you keep feeding the beast and keep playing that way.
Last one for you, Hal Gill, presented by Duncan. I'd say it's kind of a hot seat question. You okay with that?
Yeah, but I'm expecting something from you. You've been just talking to me the whole time. You haven't really asked me a question. You're just telling me your thoughts.
And then you're reacting to, which I like. But you once told me that Peter Laviolette's biggest strength of a coach was as a motivator, and that John Hines' biggest strength as a coach was his X's and O's knowledge of the game. What do you think Andrew Burnett's biggest strength is as a coach?
Well, right now, I think it's the way he wants to play. And, you look at all the forwards, go to a group and say, hey, I want to score goals. I want to play a puck possession game. And if we don't have the puck, we're not backing in. Let's go get the puck. All these guys made it to the NHL because they were always that guy, right? Every guy who ever is an athlete either wants the ball or wants the ball, go get the ball and wants to score with the ball. And I think that's what we're seeing with Bruno is he's given these guys the motivation through his systems, if that makes sense. I think he doesn't have to go in and say anything. He says, guys, let's go play hockey and play the way you always played and make plays and continue plays. And I think that's what guys really enjoy playing for him and going out there and, they want to play fast. Who doesn't like that? Who doesn't like the system that they're playing right now? When it's clicking, it's fast, and you score a lot of goals, and he likes that, and that's what players want.
So do the fans, by the way. I will tell you this, and this is my own experience of it, but talking to fans, the text line, just the style of play, I think the fans are really entertained by. Hal Gill will be on the call tonight right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. If you don't have ESPN+, you got to listen to Hal. Hal, great stuff. Appreciate you as always.
I'll be here for you guys. Just tune in. It's good. This is going to be a fun game. I'm excited for it.
Thanks, Jared. Hal Gill, as always, he'll be on the call tonight. Stillman and Company, it is a big one. Like Hal said, Predators game day's next. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house listed with TJ and get it seen, heard, and sold. The Predators tonight, what could be a Stanley Cup measuring stick game on the road at Florida, where the Panthers are 45-19-4, good for 94 points. The Predators 40-25-4, good for 84 points. And again, this one is a 6:30 start time on ESPN Plus, but of course right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. We start with the coach's take. Here's Andrew Burnett.
They're probably arguably the best team in the league. They got every piece to win a Stanley Cup, so it's going to be a big challenge for us tonight.
It is a big old challenge tonight, and they are considered one of the top, if not the top team in the NHL. Now, taking a look at the standings, again, we're keeping our eyes on this. The Predators at 84 points are 5 ahead of Vegas, though Vegas does have a game in hand. And the Predators are 8 points clear of Minnesota with a game in hand. This team is making the playoffs, folks. Like, there is no way. They are going to make the playoffs. In fact, according to MoneyPuck.com, the Predators have a 98.9% chance of making the playoffs. Ian, I think I like those odds.
Pretty good.
I think that is puts you at least, we should feel that way, that they're going to end up making the playoffs. But one thing that's important to note is that I really don't want the Predators to end up on the other side of the bracket. So right now, Vancouver 1 point ahead of Winnipeg with a game in hand. We're going to keep our eyes on that. Root for Vancouver to lose. No, excuse me. Root for Vancouver to win, and Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas to lose. The Predators are dealing with injuries. Again, Jeremy Lauzon's going to be out, and as will Spencer Stastny, which means Delgazo's in the lineup. So we'll be checking that one out as well. And I did promise that we were going to be giving away a pair of tickets to Tuesday night's game at the very top of the show. And in the first hour, I gave you a code word. And if you remember what that code word was, you need to call Ian right now at 615-737-1025. The first person to do it and to tell Ian the code word will be going to see the Predators on Tuesday night against the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, you have to have the code word. So if you're one of these people that's just immediately going to their phones and just saying, hey, let's punch it in there, you got to know the code word. So good luck to you on that front. Max has you set with the pregame show. And again, it's a big one tonight for the Predators. Win, and we can start talking about the Cup.